Happy June, everybody. It is June 3rd, Monday, the beginning of the week, the beginning of the month, 2019. Cheers, everybody. Feeling good. Got 2 hours of sleep, got 2 good nights of sleep last night and the night before. I don't know if you've been keeping score here on Cup of Jones, but I don't sleep much. I work a lot and get a lot of stuff done and am bad at managing my time. And so usually when Amanda's around 10:30 at night, it's like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, there's like 50 things I need to do before I go to bed. 2 hours of sleep is enough. You know, it's if you're going to get sleep on the other nights, then maybe you can just do 2 hours. But hi, everybody. I did a lot of painted some fun stuff in our kids' room, our upcoming kids' room, the kid I'm going to have in August, and finished painting the garage, actually. I had the gray paint, which you see behind you. Previously, I had painted most of the garage, and there was just still some stuff to fill in the corner. Filled in some of that, put some pictures back up, starting to feel a little bit like home. And it was just kind of like this weird limbo room in between. I'm looking to put some more fun stuff in the background as well, so slowly but surely improvements to the studio. And we're, according to Daniel Bloodworth, we are at 60 E3 appointments, 6-0, across 9 of us. Only, not even all 9 specifically going to multiple appointments, but yeah, shout out to Daniel Bloodworth, who I will be giving credit for in just a second for another thing as well, but for scheduling all of that stuff. It's going to be a very exciting E3. I guess I'll just start with that. E3 is this weekend. E3, our coverage kicks off this Saturday. I will get into that in a second. But before I do, I want to make a fun announcement. On our website, easyallies.com, if you want to go check it out, we now have an exclusives tab. So if you look at the top of the page, you'll see exclusives. And those are a list of our Patreon exclusives. So now if you are... I saw some people, I missed the name, but I saw somebody, give it a refresh if you don't see it. Saw a couple people in chat, and I'm sure there's always 1 or 2 new people to Cup of Jones every single week. Actually made me realize I should probably put some informational text in every post of Cup of Jones that just says, here's basically what the show is. So on the website now, we now have a link. If you are a patron, all of you should be patrons. That's how this should work. You can go and not only check out your $1 exclusives, but there are also a couple of Reaction Shots exclusives, which were at the $7 and above level. But again, shout out to Bloodworth for organizing a lot of this stuff, for working, much more than any of us did with Brent Phillips, who designed that website, and specifically referencing the video and audio clips for Cup of Jones. Probably took him at least like a half a day, if not longer, because a lot of that stuff is also organized. So it's not just you getting access to stuff that you might have missed before. It's all of the video episodes of Cup of Jones, and then you can see that cut off where I went from video to audio. And then it's each of the video posts and the audio posts for each episode of Cup of Jones. So it'll be fun, obviously, not only now if you missed any of that stuff, or if you want to, sell any friends or pass along any of that information on to people that you know, or people that might be interested in Easy Allies. But it'll be fun to chronicle all of our exclusives in the future. And if we can want to do other, Patreon exclusive shows, or maybe continue any of the shows that we've done before, all of that will be listed there. If anyone's ever confused about exclusives, you can, it's a very easy direct, easyallies.com, click on the word exclusives, and then you can see all that stuff. And it's fun too, because we've been talking about improvements to the site, for a while. We've been talking about betting trackers, and we've been talking about having this exclusives list, and having Patreon specifically linked to the website. So if you go to the website, it recognizes that you are already signed into Patreon, and then it, can provide a bunch of services, potentially the same services that Patreon provides. We're talking about possibly using the website, to cover a lot of stuff that Patreon doesn't necessarily do so well. Spoiler mode, Uzi Suicide brings up in chat. Spoiler mode is there as well if you want to catch up on all of those. But this took a fair amount of time, and it took out of our schedule, not a fair amount of time just in general, but considering all of the stuff that we have to do, especially leading up to E3. And so, again, appreciate very much Daniel Bloodworth for putting in that time, but it just also shows that that's why, we don't work on 20 different updates to the website at once. If we get a chance and it makes sense to do something, and it's obviously Brent is free to work on it, and that we'll do these things one at a time, and we'll slowly but surely make improvements to the website. So keep those suggestions coming about ways that we can make EasyAllies.com into a fun resource for our community. But we have been talking about that one for a while, been working on it for a while, and finally got that together. So it is E3, folks. It is the week of E3. If you go to also EasyAllies.com, you can see our schedule. So let's go through it. We have... So the Saturday is going to be interesting because it's going to be a little bit of a test for a lot of reasons. One, it's going to be technically the beginning of our E3 coverage. Technically, we're still going to be running through a lot of things that we're setting up that week. And so it's going to be interesting to see what our coverage looks like when we first kick things off on Saturday. It's also going to be interesting to see how Electronic Arts handles their EA Play gameplay stream. So they're not actually doing an official press conference. And so we're going to be on hand at 9 a.m. on Twitch to watch whatever they have to show and talk about it. Two people that may or may not be there are myself and Brad Ellis, because we will be going to EA Play and we'll be checking that stuff out there. And so we will have impressions later on in our E3 coverage to talk about stuff that we have that they're going to have there, presumably like Jedi Fallen Order and maybe some other fun announcements that they make. Excited to see what they have on offer. And so, yeah, 9 a.m. and then just question mark in terms of like how interesting that'll be or how much we want to continue that. But that'll be an interesting start to our coverage, because it won't be, I don't consider it like the official start of E3. Obviously, EA Play is going to be going Sunday as well. You can go to EA Play if you would like, if you're going to be in the Los Angeles area. But of course, the major press conferences, the big media events, all are just back to back to back starting on Sunday. And then, of course, Monday is another big day of press conferences, and then we start the show on Tuesday. But Sunday, we kick things off at 12 p.m. with our Xbox pre-show. The conference will begin at 1. It's supposed to be a big, meaty conference, so we have that scheduled from 1 to 3. And then from 3 to 4:30, we have time to talk about all the crazy things that happened at the Xbox press conference and get ready for Bethesda. Starting at 4:30, Bethesda will be at 5:30 to 7. And then immediately after Bethesda will be the Devolver conference from 7 to 8. That is also a wild card every year. We have no idea what that's going to be like. And so maybe we would make time to do it if we had the time, but we don't have the time immediately following Bethesda to go right into Devolver, so we won't be doing a lot of speculation about what to see at Devolver. Maybe we'll have a little bit of time to talk about the stuff that we saw at Bethesda, but then after 8 p.m. on Sunday night, once Devolver is over, then we will not only have a chance to talk about the Bethesda conference at length, but the entire day, and maybe talk about what our coverage is going to be like the following day. And then Monday is a day, let me tell you. Monday is absolutely insane. 9 a.m. You got the PC Gaming pre-show. And keep in mind, even with the schedule, I think there's like 1 or 2 events that we're still missing. There's a VR showcase. We actually have a question for it coming up that we will not be covering because there's just like too much stuff going on. 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. is our pre-show for the PC Gaming Show. 10 a.m. the PC Gaming Show starts. It goes roughly until noon. At noon begins our Ubisoft pre-show, and then at 1 p.m. is the Ubisoft press conference. And then that'll end at 3 p.m. That'll give us some time to talk about not only Ubisoft, but maybe some leftovers from the PC Gaming Show as well. And then the Kind of Funny Showcase, which is the second time that the Kind of Funny has done a showcase. The first time we did not do reactions, because I didn't know what they were going to do. And that's, we always try to set up, a red flag whenever we're going to be doing reactions or covering an event that we've never seen before. We have no idea what they're going to do, and so we don't know what to expect. And so I kind of wanted to step back and just let Kind of Funny do their thing, even though they directly promoted it and encouraged people to do reactions, because I'm sure that is something that they enjoy. They do reactions to other events, and it's fun for you to do an event and for people to react to you. We've learned our lesson. It's a darn good show. I'm really excited to see what they bring to E3 this year. Obviously, E3 is a time when a lot of people are ready to show off a lot of cool stuff. So should be some fun surprises. 4:15 until 5:30 exactly will be the showcase, and we'll be doing discussions after that. But not for too long, because 5:30 p.m. begins our pre-show for the Square Enix press conference, which will be at 6. I will be very much excited for that. I don't think I'm going to be on the panel, but I'll be in the background. I'll be in the streaming room ready to go, because supposedly they're going to be announcing what the heck this crazy Avengers game is. There's some leaks out there, some descriptive stuff that has leaked. Be careful if you don't want to read that. But I have read up on it, and I'm very excited about that game. And then Sunday night, we're going to be changing things up. I mentioned this before, but we're going to be doing our podcast Monday night. Sorry, not Sunday night. Monday night, 8 p.m. to 9:30, roughly, will be the E3 version of the Easy Allies podcast. What sucks about that, in classic Nintendo fashion, we will not be ready to talk about Nintendo because Nintendo will be the following morning. That is a sacrifice that we are willing to make because last year and the year before that, we did the Easy Allies podcast on Tuesday night. And while we had all the relevant information and we had that first day of the show and we really had most of the announcements that were going to happen at E3, so it seemed like a logical time to do the podcast because now it's time we can actually get together and talk about things. But the sacrifice we made in the years past that we don't want to make anymore and we think will work out better this way is the fact that it's after the first day of the show and we are chomping at the bit to do impressions. Like, we get the chance to do some impressions in the podcast last year and the year before that, but we don't want to do any shows or any silly format or anything. Yes, you heard me. I call the Easy Allies podcast the silly format. We want to dive right into the absolute most important thing we saw that day and then just rank it backwards and just go through all of that stuff. So we're going to be doing the podcast the night before. So we won't be able to talk about Nintendo. We'll be able to talk about everything else. And I'm sure even outside of those press conferences, a lot of fun stuff will happen anyway. And so we'll lose the podcast news in Nintendo, but we'll gain the fact that after our first day, you could just see in the years past, you could see people just like sitting in their chairs freaking out because they're like, when is this podcast going to be over so I can get on the desk and talk about all the stuff that I saw? And then Tuesday morning we have our starter pre-show at 8 a.m. Woohoo! 8 a.m. Nintendo pre-show for the Nintendo Direct, and then at 9 a.m. to 10:30, we'll hopefully find out what Animal Crossing is called, and then we'll bolt to the show as fast as we possibly can, check out the show, and then the schedule goes the same, as it has been in previous years, roughly, for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which, if you don't know, are the actual days of the conference. So the doors to the LA Convention Center open on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We'll be doing our nightly impressions starting at 8:30 on Tuesday, 8:30 on Wednesday, and 6:30 on Thursday. I will not be on I will be on night. I'll be on our impressions Thursday night, but I won't be there until a little bit later, for a reason that I'll hopefully be able to announce soon. I'll be doing some other fun stuff at E3 that I'll talk about soon. Can't talk about next week because there won't be a Cup of Jones next week. And then also very fun, our Friday we'll have coverage from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. We're calling it one more round. That'll give us two opportunities. One, to talk about anything that we missed throughout the week. And two, for fun guests to stop by. We'll be kicking it off with Tim Geddes and Greg Miller from Kind of Funny to talk about what they checked out during the week and stuff that they liked. And not really sure. I got an email from Tim the other day. He's like, what's the format that we're going to do when we're on your show? We're like, we have no idea because the show hasn't happened yet. So we're going to basically get there Friday morning, sleep in a little bit, and then get there Friday morning and figure out, okay, what do we want this to be? What do we want to start with? What are the big games we haven't talked about yet? And so, yeah, our E3 coverage will be from Saturday to Friday, almost a full week of talking about all of these crazy things that happen during this, this E3 week. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. So there you go. Again, this is all information that you can find. I just wanted to go through it officially just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Let me see if there's anything in chat. Anybody screaming anything in chat? Anything? Blood being like, no, you're no. You're wrong. No. Okay. Yeah, did I mention Pokemon? Yeah, Pokemon is going to be this Wednesday morning. It's at 6 a.m., which is brutal. So we're going to do Pokemon reactions later that day. Yeah, that 6 a.m. is a no-go. Maybe E3, we will get up at 6 a.m., but... So yeah, there's E3. We're shooting the betting special on Tuesday and posting as soon as possible. One thing that always cracks us up, but is also frustrating to deal with every single year, is everybody wants the betting special, and they want the betting special like weeks before E3. Like it's like a month before E3. Everyone's like, no mention of bets. Where's the bets at? And it's like, we've never done bets less than like 4 days before E3 ever. Like that's how we do E3 bets ever since we've been doing E3 bets. And then like the year after that, it'll be a month out. People are like, where are those E3 bets at? And it's like, why would we bet on something E3 related 4 weeks before E3 when like 2 weeks later we'd be like, half of these bets are answered. Like we know like that person's now just announced that they're not going to be at E3, or that thing leaked, or we now have more information than we did prior. It's basically, it's kind of the same thing as impressions. Like we can't do impressions until we actually go to the show. And so we I've seen the structure of the betting special. I know some people are nervous about the format changing this year. I'm really excited not only about there's a betting post that has been made on patreon.com/Easy Allies if you've missed it, where Bossman had some initial questions that can, basically kind of inform and shape a bit, the way that bets are going to go this year. But if you want to be a part of that, you can, or you can just tune in when bets go live. But bets always go up the week of E3. They always go up the week before. They always have. That's just the way bets work. So I feel bad for all these people that think we're like shortchanging them or something by not doing bets already. And there are 4 E3 previews going live this week, including Control, which went up this morning. Brad Ellis played Control. Brad Ellis talked to Ben Moore about Control. Brandon Jones cut that preview and put it up this morning. And we're going to be having 3 other previews going up this week for just pre-E3 previews. And there's some stuff we can't even talk about until the actual show. And there are... obviously, our coverage starts on Saturday, and so it's fun. We have no control over how these embargoes are laid out leading up to E3, but I think this week will be fun. And I want to reiterate and say thanks to Ben and Brad and Bloodworth and Brandon. The 4 Bs all went to Judges Week this year. I remember 2 years ago when I did Judges Week, and it was just me talking about stuff. I very selfishly hoarded all the Judges Week appointments, and this year not only did we had a fun time, sending different people to different appointments that made more sense for them, but it was fun having different people sit down to do impressions. When, I saw Call of Duty, if you haven't seen that yet, and I sat down, I talked to Ben. It would have been great to talk to Huber, but he was on vacation, but talked to Ben and Brad, have an impression later this week for a franchise that not a lot of us at Easy Allies actually know a lot about. And so I talked to Bloodworth about that. And like I said, for Control, it was fun for, Ben and Brad to share those impressions. And so it's been interesting not only to get other allies at those Judges Week appointments, but to have other allies talking with them so we can shake up. So you're not only watching, like, clearly they shot all this in one day. You're getting different impressions, different allies at different times. So it's fun. I like how this week is shaping up. It's an exciting ramp up to E3. And we got Ian is coming back into town this week, and we're going to be going through all of just tech-wise building everything out for E3. So that will be very exciting. I did write it down. Pokemon reactions Wednesday. We're going to do it at 2 p.m. We did Death Stranding reactions last week, and it was the same thing where we didn't know when the trailer was going to drop, so we did kind of like a rough estimation of when we were going to gather at the office and do reactions to it. So we weren't like right on top of that. You had to wait a couple hours if you wanted those reactions, but in the long term, it works out well for everybody, because if you don't get a chance to check out the reactions until the next day, you don't really care when we do them. And so we're going to do the same thing with Pokemon. We're going to be getting more information about the Switch game and other stuff. Pokemon's been making some crazy announcements lately, and it'll be fun. We just got to not watch those, stay off Twitter, and then show up later in the day to the office, as I usually do whenever we shoot stuff on Wednesday, because I'm doing the podcast late the night before. But thanks to everybody that tuned into our Death Stranding reactions. It should be no surprise to anybody when we do reactions to big games, they perform really well. And so that is definitely a high priority at Easy Allies. And it's thanks to Michael Damiani for orchestrating a lot of the reaction stuff and the schedule. And it's fun to be doing more of those and experimenting with those, because that's been a request previously on Cup of Jones. Community Showcase is this Thursday. I'll be sitting down with Ben Moore. The post is up if you missed it. So get involved in that showcase if you would like. And I'm going to mention at the end of this episode, I'm mentioning it very briefly at the top, not to bring things down too much on Cup of Jones, but definitely had this information last week, but out of respect to Ian, wanted to wait until Ian put up a video. And if you have not seen it, in the latest episode of Easy Updates, Ian addresses the fact that his father passed away a week or two ago. I'm not sure how many days it's been since then. I think he said it was 5 days since he shot that video, and it's obviously been a couple days since he posted that episode. But obviously we, have so much love for all of the allies and all of their family members. Like I think we're all connected through all of the personal experiences that all of the allies share. But this was a man that I knew. This is a man that I worked with. He's been in things that we've done before here at Easy Allies. And so not only, obviously, Ian is grieving, we are all grieving for him as well here at Easy Allies. I just want to talk a little bit about that at the end of the episode, because I know there's a lot of questions about what Ian was up to the last couple months. And, he talked a little bit about the grieving process and just kind of about loss. And it's been really interesting to value how much time does Huber get when Huber gets married? How much time does Ian get off, if Ian's dealing with grief and dealing with losing a family member, or specifically his father? And, how much time do I get off if I'm planning on having a child? And all of this stuff is interesting in terms of us being a partnership, this LLC, Easy Allies, this company, us being an equal partnership where we all have a vote, we all have a say in terms of how do we handle these things moving forward. And so this has been an interesting case study in, how to how interesting it is, the process of trying to give an ally space when you have a community that obviously cares for that person very much, and that person is very much involved in a lot of different aspects of Easy Allies. I think if we can get into this later in the episode, we can get into business questions, but before we even do that, Mr. Thomas Hank, cheers, rest in peace, sir. A fine man with a fine son and a wonderful family, and lots of love to Ian. Okay, I would take a moment of silence usually for a smoothie drink, so moment of silence, Mr. Thomas Hank. All right, business questions. Varun Kachwaha. I think we may have missed last time. Correct me if I'm wrong. My question is regards to your content and who, in your mind, is your main demographic for this content. One thing I've noticed with a lot of Allies content is that it's generally quite long, with the main selling points of said content being you, the Allies. And I like that. I'm here for your perspectives and personalities. It's what differentiates you from the other channels. But when I look at this content from the perspective of an outsider, it looks less appealing. Things like the podcast, tabletop escapades, discussions, even the quiz show, content that mainly dominates the channel, in my opinion, is content that people don't know the Allies would maybe find hard getting into. Have you thought about making shorter content or something that has a wider appeal? Something that is low effort, but might drive growth to the channel, like short news updates as they happen or something like that. Might not be the best idea since I don't think it suits the view you have for Easy Allies. Specifically news there's just a lot of people that do it better than us, so not something we've been interested in doing. Maybe even film reviews. It's shorter to watch a film than play a game, and you can release those more frequently. But something like that, some sort of content that anyone can jump into at any time with no knowledge of the Allies. And once they dip their toe in, go to the other longer content. Yeah, I think it's a matter of, I know for a lot of the Allies, let me just make sure I got the right, no, I got the wrong Wi-Fi there. Okay, now I'm on the right Wi-Fi, no worries. I think, obviously all of the content that we produce at Easy Allies is stuff that we want to do. And so, we've talked about, segmenting things out. Actually, Kyle's been talking a lot about changing up the format in terms of like having additional stuff that we shoot outside of the podcast. We've talked recently about the Easy Allies podcast. We've talked about possibly promoting the podcast, grabbing like a little clip and putting that in some kind of trailer or like a preview clip that goes up, post that goes up on Twitter and Facebook. But there, it's the low effort short stuff. Is not as like quick as it sounds. It's not. And I think it just generally, Blood says that's a good point. The discussion style previews are often 10 minutes or less, and those show up well in search. I think there's stuff that we could do more to promote like the bigger stuff, but it's interesting because it would drive growth, but it's not necessarily solving a problem that we feel it at Easy Allies. Like, I think, like you said, our personalities are a large part of what, why people tune in, what people see as, the value of Easy Allies, the specific type of content that we produce. And a lot of the stuff that we produce is either on the list of when we first created Easy Allies or very much, in that vein of the, the content that we originally started with. And of course, the content that we are producing because we have promised to do that on Easy Allies. And I don't think it's such a bad thing to grow super fast, but I think a lot of the promotional stuff would be done in an effort to bring people in. And I want them to be, because that's the thing. It's like, if you watch I'm rambling. If you watch the podcast, if you watch some of our longer stuff and you're like, yeah, I'm not really into these guys. I'm not really sold on the podcast right away. We had a question a couple weeks ago where someone played the podcast for someone else and they were like, yeah, I don't know if I'm really into this group. Then I don't know if Easy Allies is for you. I don't know, I don't necessarily want, to kind of open the floodgates and have like tons of people, coming in, almost kind of like as an act of desperation. We really need to get our numbers up. We really need to get our Patreon numbers up. And so we kind of need to repackage Easy Allies in a way that it actually isn't. And so you have us producing content that you're going in, then people looking for more content like that and not really finding it because we only produced that content to get you in, like you said, to dip your toe in and then maybe experience the other stuff. And I worry that those users would be like, this isn't what I was looking for. I was looking for more of the short content stuff like that. So, like I opened with this answer, it's I would be much more interested in doing clip out stuff of things like Frame Trap, reaction shots, the Easy Allies podcast, than doing short format stuff on its own, because it's just generally not something that the allies are interested in. It's just not something that when we, it can be easy. And there is stuff like Hubris Syndrome. Like Hubris Syndrome, is usually like 8 or 10 minutes. Yeah, I'd rather it to be a directly promotional material stuff that we're already producing instead of something new that we're doing. Keep in mind, if any ally came to me, Brad came, because we comment sometimes, Brad does not have a show. If Brad came to me and he's like, I want to do a new show where I do a 5-minute clip every single morning, it's not like I would tell him no. It'd be like, oh my goodness, yes, do this. It's just something that hasn't gotten a lot of traction in terms of like checking in with each of the allies and what they want to do. But I'm more interested, like I was saying, of clipping out stuff and having shorter format stuff for people to absorb that gives them an idea of what to expect from the longer format stuff. Louis Sandiford, please promote the Patreon heavily during E3. I remember it barely getting a mention last year during coverage, which seemed odd to me compared to other Patreon-funded people. It's the time of year when more eyeballs are on you than any other, with lots of new viewers hopping in and out. Tell them. Yep, wrote down takeaways. You are not wrong. Thank you, Liz. Or Louis. Brandon K. Gann, regarding when you were discussing embargoes last week, I'm curious how EZA handles multiple embargoes at a time. How do you keep up with all the different information, such as dates, times, what you can say, and prevent mixing up info all you need to keep track of? For spaced out games where you're only dealing with 1 or 2 at a time, I can understand being much more manageable, but in cases of of Judges Week or during annual fall releases, how do you keep from misremembering which dates go for which embargoes? Do you keep all the emails together for easy access? Is an ally assigned to that game's specific embargo info? When they let it be known, they'll be the ones to review the game? Yeah, so first of all, the easy answer is Bloodworth. We also have a calendar that all of us can access, and so all of those embargoes are listed in the calendar. So it's good to, so for example, Control was our, went up this morning, our E3, pre-E3 Critics Tour, aka Judges Week impressions, and that was in the calendar. That I made a list of that beforehand, and so this weekend I was like, I know I have to cut something for Monday. What is it? And I just checked the list, like, yes, it's Control. But the obviously, and should be a surprise to nobody, the worst ally when it comes to not saying something that they're embargoed to not say is obviously Michael Huber, because he just gets too damn excited. And I think that's like one of the biggest enemies in terms of like, wait, should we have said that? Like when I went to the Independent evening on Judges Week, there were a lot of cool games that I saw, and it was kind of crazy. I'm like playing Sayonara Wild Hearts, being like, have people played this? I don't remember. And this other game, like, this game seems really weird. Seems like, you feel like it would have some crazy embargo, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I got to check the information again. But it's usually Bloodworth because, as the managing editor, managing director, I played, but specifically as the person who is, monitoring all of the reviews and those videos going in and out, that he is the one, to remind people of when things need to get shot and when, we can talk or cannot talk about things. Managing editor, there we go. Managing babysitter, managing mom. But it's always good to be careful about things. It's always good to just kind of check with at least one other person. And so you'll see us doing a lot of that, like on the group streams when we talk about what's going on that week. It's like, yeah, and something else is happening. Can we talk about that? Like, yeah, someone's out today. That's why we'll say things like, people are on doing, extended research breaks or on assignment, the people are just out, and you'll find out about what's going on with them later. But it can be tricky. And so it's always good to play things on the safe side, just in case, you don't want to say something you're not supposed to say. Daniel Garza Andrade, what's the thing you fear the most about Easy Allies during E3? The power going out. Power and internet just out. Maybe not getting into the show would be rough, but we would still do all the press conference coverage, and that would be nice. If just for some random reason we couldn't get in, but not covering the show, it's the worst. Obviously, like the building burning down would probably suck too, but just having no control over power or internet, having just the infrastructure fail. Oof, boy, that would suck. David Warren, any plans to review Beat Saber now that it's out of early access? I've been playing it constantly since it launched on Rift, and the current version has a lot of improvements since you last played it on Group Stream. I have definitely played it a lot since that group stream. Was not paying attention because that's a game that doesn't feel like it's in or out of early access. It's just everyone's talking about it. You got to check it out. It's available on all the systems. Go play it. But thank you for the update. I actually am tempted to do maybe this summer before I have a kid, and if I have a little bit of time, I want to do some VR don't skips. Do maybe like 2 or 3 episodes of Don't Skip that focus on Beat Saber would be a great one. Hello, the play that I like. I don't remember the name of it. The Finest Hours, The Longest Hours, The Invisible Hours. Do a video on that as well. But yeah, that might be Don't Skip worthy. Christopher Frederick, I've got a question about review timing. I know you guys do your best to get reviews out as soon as you can. Getting a review a week after release doesn't bother me at all. What I find odd is seeing a review go up in the middle of the night. Rage went up at 3:30 a.m. and Observation went up a little after midnight. Wouldn't it make more sense to release it later in the day when the majority of your audience is awake? Bloodworth answered this. If something's already a week behind, there may be some small advantage to posting it a couple hours later. But in general, I think that it's best to get a review up as soon as we can. Those all go up late because I cut a lot. I didn't cut Observation, but I cut Rage. And that 3:30 a.m. That's just classic Jones. That's just my schedule. They gain a lot of momentum in search and recommendations worldwide. Looking at your example for Rage 2, Europe was already well into their day, and the East Coast in the US was starting to get out of bed. For Observation, part of the West Coast was still awake, and the game had only been out for a couple hours at that point, with a lot of chatter online and people curious how it is. Sometimes even publishers' embargo times can come in at what feels like the middle of the night, allowing reviews to start going up at 4 a.m. because of time zones where a company is based. For me, it's really just like a hot potato. The longer you wait, the colder it gets. We'll take the time to get it right, but once it's ready, it's better to just get it out there. He said it better than I ever could. Yeah, nailed it. Done. Soulful, especially because it burns, man. When you don't have that review up, like, and you're just waiting, you want to get it up. Soulful Chris, someone brought up the idea of doing a podcast teaser trailer for the Easy A podcast, but I was thinking more of just cutting clips out of the show and posting those separately. It'll be a little bit of both. It's a trend I see a lot of video podcasts do, and I think it'd benefit bringing in more people to the podcast as a whole. Side note, though, a lot of the clipped podcast shows usually host their clips on a separate channel, so I'm sure that's something that's counterproductive when you guys already have 2 running YouTube channels. Yeah, we wouldn't do that. Rammer, I love polls. Have you thought of adding a monthly poll to Patreon? We've had people request that. Preferably, the poll would be a simple question with no need for a follow-up to the results. The poll would be more of a fun temperature read of a random subject of your choice, although it could be more structured if you wish. Perhaps posting the final results at the end of the podcast. Some examples. In your opinion, what was the most influential first-person shooter? A, GoldenEye. B, Doom. C, Halo. D, Call of Duty. The answer is B, Doom. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the film Aliens? A, 10. B, 9. C, 7. D, 6. E, 5 or below. Aliens would be a 10. You can restrict the poll to... Okay, so B and A. There you go. You can restrict the poll to anyone with $1 or more sub. I believe the engagement would be great, and it would give supporters a chance to have their voices heard. Not all supporters have the opportunity to submit feedback or questions every month, and a simple click vote in a poll may keep them involved and incentivize membership. Polls are fun, sure. It's tough because that's just like another thing that we could do that would be fun, that wouldn't, make us more money or wouldn't get us more YouTube subs. And so it's tough to just like keep adding things onto the list that we're doing that, are just for fun. But if we remember to do that, and if that's something each of the allies gets really excited about, and one of them is like, I'll do the polls. Sure, I'll handle that. But I ain't doing it. Brian Schmidt, can you tell us when the next Brandon Go will be? It's been about 2 years since the last one. I certainly don't want to do just some random Brandon Go. I would want to line up a bunch of games and then start doing that stream weekly. I'm doing Dreams almost every week. I might do Dreams tomorrow. Blood, I don't know if you put Dreams in the schedule. I might do Dreams tomorrow. I don't know. Because I got to get up super early Wednesday morning for something. But yeah, it has been 2 years since the last one, and that was definitely a show that I wanted to do a lot of. One of the other things that was an issue with Brandon Go, I did have the inspiration to do it at a couple times, but the actual device that I got, the little iPhone dongle that plugs in HDMI, has just been floating around. I think actually just changed hands from one ally to another just not even like a week ago. So I just need to buy another one of those and have one that's just mine that I use. when I want to do stuff mobile. But I actually, now that you mentioned it, I actually just recently got into Plants vs. Zombies again, just the old school classic Plants vs. Zombies. And I managed to finish up all of the achievements in that game. There were 3 achievements that I hadn't finished. Put in a little time, put in a little effort. Dreams isn't currently on the schedule. Okay, cool. I think I might not do Dreams this week because and obviously won't do Dreams next week for E3. So I think I might take a little bit of time off from Dreams, get some rest tomorrow. But yeah, I want to bring that back, but I can't tell you, obviously, definitively that will be, or if I get a chance to do that before August, where I will be taking a lot of time off of Easy Allies. Asbo Zapruder, who's usually does the personal questions, and does the personal question, but had a short business question. For the past few weeks, I've been enjoying watching both you and Kyle create your own video games. Video games. The word stream is not in that sentence at all. Have the two of you considered getting together to compare and contrast your experiences working on these projects so far? I think it would be a fun conversation and one I would be very much interested in watching. Yeah. Let me add that. I didn't know. Love it. Matt Kaufman, I just read that Twitch is testing subscriber-only live streams. Would Easy Allies ever consider any sort of regular sub-only stream? Maybe. Some people do like early stuff, so like it might be fun to do like a little like 10 minutes early before the group stream. So like you just hang out with us while we're setting stuff up, or yeah, I wouldn't want it to be like its own show name. You know, I wouldn't want to focus on that too heavily because that's how we run Patreon. We try to push a lot of our traffic and a lot of our attention toward Patreon in terms of like if we're going to paygate something, if there's going to be a major thing that we're producing that you can't get unless you give us money. But at the same time, you know, people are really good to us on Twitch, and I think that would be fun. And I'm sure I'd be really curious to test that to see like how angry, you know, how much our, paying subscribers enjoy it, how angry people would be that they can't get access to it, how much it would help traffic. Subscriber only salad mic screen. Yeah. But, and just in general, anytime, we find out that somebody's testing something or that they're slowly rolling out something, it usually takes a long time for us to adopt it because we want to make sure stuff, we manage to break stuff as much as we can on our own. We don't need Twitch to break stuff for us. Snowcone Guy. 3 things about your streams. 1, when chat says that the game or video in your streams isn't loud enough, Damiani often tells us that he can't make it any louder. Is there something I'm missing, or isn't it the same as reducing the volume of your mics? After all, the problem is the balance between your volume and the volume of the game you play or video you react to. The viewers can raise their speaker volume, but they can't separate the different elements they hear. Please tap a note to Damiani's desk that says higher game volume, lower mic volume. I got it. Sometimes that can be just really confusing because people send a lot of mixed signals. So I think sometimes when you hear, they're like, no, don't drop the mics, turn the game up. Like some people specifically, I'll see that in chat. Like some people specifically say that. So, but I'm sure Damiani knows that. I'll remind him of it. 2, sometimes during streams, you are afraid to play certain music for the stream not to get muted. But as far as I'm aware, this is about Twitch, not YouTube. Twitch is muting certain music in its replay. So I have to wonder, are you not recording your streams locally? I used to stream with OBS and I always let it make a local recording of my stream at the same time. I hope you always do the same so you have an unmuted recording and possibly better quality at your fingertips when you need it. We do sometimes, we don't do always. Number 3, I don't know why we do it always, but yeah, it's just something that we don't necessarily need to be filling up that computer with just massive streams every time we stream. Number 3, what happened to Porky Pig? It kept moving to the right, and now it seems to be gone. Tell Kyle that his actions don't go unnoticed. At least give Porky a decent goodbye or a cameo. That's not how you treat an industry veteran. I think he's still in the room. Yeah, I think he's just over on the shelf or something, but I'll bring Porky back. I love that those were clearly in order of importance, with number 3 being the most pivotal one. All right, time for a criticism. Let's take it. Zugdar, I found it concerning how Jones poo-pooed the idea that technical issues are going to happen and just seemed to accept it as if it's the way things are. People have given tons of resources to improve the overall production value of EZA, and it's a bummer that there's still glaring issues. It's also a disservice to the roots of EZA, which was the high-quality productions of GT. For example, I tuned into Pokemon press conference in Japan, and opening moments before the show was watching the struggle of the group figure out the chat feed on the Raspberry Pi. It really dampens the mood and overshadows otherwise enjoyable coverage. I don't see that as much with similar outlets that have been tuning others to others more often after each gaming event. I hold any other thoughts until after E3, but just wanted to communicate the concern. As a group, you do so much right, but I really think this is what's holding back casual viewers from getting into EZA. I get things are live, but it's not really the selling the promise of a studio. You're not wrong. One of the major issues about how Easy Allies operates is every single employee of Easy Allies, when you give money, like you said, like money is going into, you're like, what's the actual term? People given tons of resources to improve the overall production value of EZA. Those resources are going towards 9 writers and producers. They are going towards 9 people that have gathered to be on camera and talk about video games. That is our passion. That is our expertise. That is what we are good at. We do not have money to hire anyone else. We every now and then have money to hire people to come in for events. But if we just do reactions to something, there's no other people coming in to do that. So you run into 2 major issues. One, none of us went to school for this. Ian did. Ian has been out. Ian has been gone. So if there's any issues with the lights, none of us can fix that. If there's any issues with things that he set up in the studio, none of us can fix that. If there's an issue with the Raspberry Pi that is something we've never seen before, that's asking for a password that we can't even type in, like we have the password, we have the information, we have that listed. We're typing it in the Raspberry Pi. It doesn't like it. We're like, we've never used this. We didn't necessarily set this up. Much as I wouldn't expect Ian to host an episode of Trailer Jones. He wouldn't know what he's doing. He'd be like, I've never done this before. I don't know what this is. I took over cutting for the countdown last week because Ian was busy. And so I had a lot of questions going into that. I'm like, I edit a lot of the shows, but I've never done this one show before. And so you have just a level of expertise that is an issue. And the second issue is all of us are hosts, all of us are on camera. And so when that issue happened, there wasn't like some intern that we can, push around that was behind the camera that it's now, hey, intern, all I need to do is pass on the information to you, and then you're just going to be behind the camera fixing it. No one's behind the camera. Like Damiani's behind the camera, but he's, managing the stream and talking to chat and making sure everything looks and sounds okay. He's back there on Salad Mike. And so I think technically the reason, I didn't mean to poo-poo it, although I like your use of the word poo-poo because it puts a smile on my face and it helps this conversation happen smoother. We're always on camera, and it's tough because if we want to fix something, I think you would get a sense of frustration from our community if they heard that, like, oh, what do you think about that, Jones? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And like, wait, Jones is there? Why isn't Jones on camera? There's always that sense of like, more allies need to get on camera. Like, you all need to be in front of the camera. You guys always need to be hosting everything. I need to hear your impressions. You always need to be over there. And then something will go wrong technically, and it's like, who's managing this thing? And it's like, well, one of us needs to be back there. And so it's going to be interesting as we move forward with EZA and put on more complex shows in that studio. For example, Mysterious Monsters, like, Don shot a lot of those things. Don was on one episode, and so I needed to step in and move the camera. And so we do, for major events, for Bing shooting days, we will have maybe a handful of people come in and help out technically. But we really need a person to be there that almost like our community doesn't know about, what is a camera ghost? Somebody that like, because I just always have that fear of like bringing somebody in technically that manages all that technical stuff. We also had an issue with Friendcode that we'll talk about coming up. But I get the sense that people over time will be like, wait, who is that? And we're like, oh, that's Frank. I'm like, Frank, get Frank on camera. And there's just kind of this funnel, this like kind of like slope towards like always being in front of everybody and always being on camera. And we can't have somebody that just does technical things. None of us just do technical things. To operate Easy Allies, all of us spend 95% of our time playing games, writing about games, researching games, talking about games, editing videos with games, like just like constantly, funneling all of this content out that has all of our impressions in it. And so when you get this sense of like, there was this really easy technical thing that made sense to us. It doesn't make sense to us, and it doesn't naturally fit into. That's why we have to set up so much of our stuff ahead of time so that when we come in and produce things, we can just flick switches and do it. So there's all of that. I think maybe what I was trying to hint at when I talked about this before, though, and I guess that's the third point, is technical issues are going to happen. Like, there just are. Like, I think about, I remember one going to play Dino Frontier on PSVR, and they had a poster of Dino Frontier that had a bunch of red in it that was up behind the couch where you were supposed to be demoing it, and the red in the poster was freaking out PSVR because it thought it was the red from the controller. And I went there and I'm like, hey, I'm here to demo Dino Frontier. And they're like, hold on, we're trying to figure this out. And I just remember like, okay, here's a Sony exclusive on Sony VR with a very passionate, very responsible, very talented dev team that just like, we just had this weird issue that we didn't foresee and this weird thing that happened. Blood adds, because he was the one managing all that. What sucked with the Raspberry Pi is that it looked like everything was fine. It just froze up. So it wasn't something I was aware of until we were live. And that's the other issue too, is that a lot of these things happen like while we're actually on camera. And so it's like, okay, well, I was having a conversation with Blood, but I guess just Blood leaves the show now and goes to fix that thing. And so, yeah, I mean, do I want everything to run well? Yes, of course. Are we going to test all of the equipment before E3? Like crazy. But, people make comparisons to GT and they're like, I'm reminded of these things the way they used to be back at game trailers, specifically in like the Jeff Keighley, Shane Satterfield, bonus round E3 all access era. We had probably more employees behind the camera than you saw in front of the camera. We had tons of people doing scheduling, setting up appointments, going and just producing shows. Bonus round alone had like 4 or 5 people just completely behind the camera that you never saw and will never see, that were involved in bonus round, that are just like, phantoms. We just do not have that luxury here at Easy Allies. And so, it basically, I think you could have a different Easy Allies. Like you could have an Easy Allies where we are all extremely technically proficient, but not fun to watch on camera at all. Like very not, not necessarily passionate about writing, not producing retrospectives, not doing stuff like Game Sleuth, not, but our streams and everything looks great. We literally have cutting edge tech and, really fancy graphics and really, we're updating our logo all the time. We're banging out merchandise, at an incredible frequency. But when you actually get into the, editorial portion of us, it's not that deep. It's not that complex. And so, I just think something's got to give. I wish everything that we produced at Easy Allies was to the level of 10 every single time. But yeah, somebody's bringing up Gearbox, and like obviously Gearbox wanted that video to go well. Obviously, a lot of money went into producing that thing, but just stuff happens. So when I say the technical issues are going to happen, it's not that also speaks to mind, the issue of having it drag down the content itself. So if the Raspberry Pi bails, or we have some issue with chat or some issue technically with something that's not really hurting your viewing experience in a way that you can necessarily tell like right away, then what will actually hurt your viewing experience is if the whole stream just freaks out about it. If we literally just stop everything and like we're sad because it's not working, and now we're really beating ourselves up and being like, man, we need to be more responsible, and man, we need to watch this stuff. It's better just to be like, well, that doesn't work, moving on. Like, or if we were planning on streaming a game and that game isn't working online or something gets messed up, let's just move on to the next game. So it's tricky. I'm kind of on the fence, Zugdar, because I think a lot of this, my response, I might be just boiling your blood right now, but being like, I wouldn't be surprised, Zugdar, from your position, you're like, sounds like you just don't care. It sounds like you're like, I don't care what these things look like. I don't care what these things sound like. I care a lot. Every time I just put up a new episode of Trailer Jones, every single time I put up an episode of Trailer Jones, for some reason, more than any other show. When I put up Cuppet Jones, no big deal. When I put up the podcast, it's fine. When I put up Trailer Jones, I'm like sweating. I'm just like, I know there's something I said that was stupid. I know there's something that was wrong. I know there's going to be some opinion or I misspelled something or, so yeah, I feel terrible whenever we put all this stuff together, because I know if Ian went out of town for 2 weeks, visually, everything that we do would suffer, because, a lot of the ingenuity that you see that does work, that is evident in our studio and the content that we produce is 120% Ian. It's a lot of ideas that he's had and stuff that he's wanted to do. Mysterious Monsters is the most complex live, shoot that we've done so far in the studio, and it's all Ian. Technical issues are going to happen. I say that because of just Murphy's Law. It's just kind of the nature of things going wrong. And I definitely, I just want to have the attitude of, I was expecting that. I thought something was going to go weird. Not to be, forgiving of not passing off things when they go wrong. Not if something went wrong to be like, oh, well, not even, there's no point in fixing that. Obviously we want to fix things. Obviously we want things to be better. But if we do the best that we can, if we do as much planning as we can and something still goes wrong, that is in a lot of ways out of our control, I'm just not going to beat myself up about it, because I am plenty good at doing that for other things. And technical things are just kind of one of those. It's kind of the same thing, dating back to, and I'm sure if it was Cup of Ian would give you a completely different background on, kind of our technical specifications here at Easy Allies. Me being who I am, I have never been a big tech guy. It's just not something that, I've had lots of opportunities to learn these things. And I've definitely picked up, a technical knowledge that is more vast than it was when I first graduated from college, but is not something that you don't put me in charge of tech ever. Do I want the Raspberry Pi to break? No. Do I want those windows to have all sorts of new stuff in it? Yeah. Do I want the desk not to have a green light underneath it? I really do. But it's just the question. There's not, like, at Easy Allies, we've never had that one dedicated tech person that can go in and fix all those issues. It's always a question of us just doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have. Aaron Nichols, on the last group stream, there was an issue with getting the Pi running chat to start. Didn't seem to be an issue with the tech, but nobody besides Ian knew the commands. This is definitely the kind of thing that should be into a short Google Doc, so anyone can just pull up the instructions on their phone, apply this to other processes as well. First time that has ever happened, and when we did go over those commands and instruction, we didn't realize that, also the Raspberry Pi can just freeze and then not accept inputs when you do it later. So that particular issue that had happened, even in the explanation of how Pis work, has never come up. That was a completely unusual issue. Now that Ian will be back in town this week, we should definitely draft something that is stuck in the back of that TV that explains that. Or if Pi breaks, just be like, just don't say anything on camera. Just be like, oh, weird. All right, plug in a laptop. Problem solved. Robin Clower, have you thought about adding a YouTube community posts about when the new Patreon exclusive shows are published? Things like, if you liked last week's Achieve It Yourself, our new one was just posted. Unlock it and more than just $1 for more than and more for just $1 on patreon.com/easyallies. And a link to the previous video. That might be a good way to let people know what they're missing out on and get a good reach to non-patrons. Bloodworth, I just did that for today's episode. Blood did that. So again, grats to Blood for, Blood messaged me too, that he was like, I just read a Cup of Jones comment that I did. I'm on it. Kyle Matter. Recently, the YouTuber Mark Brown of Game Maker's Toolkit made a video about creating trailers for indie games. I watched it and I loved it. It's a very cool video if you haven't checked it out. Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit. It features quotes from professional trailer makers, and it got me thinking that someone like that would make for a perfect guest on an episode of Trailer Jones. Hearing trailer critiques from someone who makes trailers for a living would be really fascinating, and it gives you a chance to flex the studio a bit. Trailer Jones would be great. It also would be amazing to, get him on a episode of our guest show whenever we make that happen, or possibly guest on the podcast. He is on my radar. Dav Gape. There seems to be a real and ongoing issue with losing episodes of Frame Trap and Friend Code, whether it's during recording or somewhere between recording and uploading. What's the issue here? Is it hardware, software, or do people need training to better ensure this stops happening? Not only do people miss out on content, which I'm sure is a bummer for most people, but, and this is my biggest concern, it's a waste of your collective time to be recording podcasts that never see the light of day. I don't see this issue with other podcasts or gaming YouTube channels I follow, with no interruptions to their output. So what's the issue here? Love and the utmost respect. Bloodworth chimes in. I've definitely seen it happen elsewhere. I will chime in for a second. Yeah, I see this happen all the time. Like, I'm curious what outlet that is perfect in terms of never uploading things, but never missing something that doesn't go well. But like, man, I see people that can't stream because of internet issues. I see people that can't post something because some audio thing farted out or something. Yeah, I see that happen a lot. It's happened to What's Good Games recently, and I've listened to plenty of radio segments when they've lost connection to whoever they were talking to, or even gone completely off air as new equipment inexplicably failed. I also think that most of the time when it happens elsewhere, they just re-record without even mentioning what was lost. So it's not that such failures didn't happen, you're just never informed of them. Aside from that transparency, I'd say the main contributing factor is that for most things we shoot, there's no one behind the camera to monitor everything. If there were, we would likely identify the problem 10 minutes in, address it, and redo the intro. That said, if you're following us super closely, it's easy for those instances to stand out and stick in your memory. But it's really only happened a handful of times out of hundreds of podcasts. Yeah, I would say our track record for producing those things is still like a 1%, below 10% issue. I know personally, the frame trap not being recorded was 100% me. This last frame trap episode, probably the best frame trap episode I have never been on. I just didn't record it. I can go into details why, but Damiani and I were basically just kind of popping in and out of the control room, and he wanted me to check the mics, which I did, but that was the opportunity to hit record, which I didn't. But he was the one, that was going to be hitting the record. So we mixed signals between the two of us to get that started. I also completely didn't hit record on an episode of Frame Trap like a year or more ago when we were here in the garage. That's it, as far as I know. Those are the only times that I've done that. So for 3 years of operation, for me, only doing that twice, only once, if you consider those being on separate shows, is a pretty good track record. And again, I think each ally is owed, or deserves at least one of those, of just some complete, man, I just forgot, and it's tricky. It's like, on one hand, I definitely want this stuff to improve, and I definitely want to get better at this. I think at the end of our meeting in June, we've had a lot of comments come up on Cup of Jones concerning technical things at Easy Ally, stuff that we can definitely iron out in the studio. Not just things that you said you were going to do this, and this hasn't been built yet, but there seems to be issues with how this stuff is laid out, and we can figure out a system. Or I know one thing that we've gotten better at is determining more of who's directly producing each segment. So if something technically does go wrong, we know who we can not point the finger and laugh at, but who is responsible for deciding what then to do. Yeah, it just, oh man, it just happens. And like Bloodworth said, you were like, Dav, you're like, one of the things that's the most frustrating to me is that it's a waste of time. Like, that is a waste of your resources to shoot that podcast and then not do it. It's also a waste of resources to have another ally show up, not be on that podcast, and sit in a chair and, play on their phone or something, play Hearthstone for like an hour, which is inevitably what we have to get. We have to get someone to hire someone that sits in that chair and just, maybe if we get loud, moves a little meter and just make sure everything's running and everything's recorded okay and the lights are working. Not a super exciting job, but something that we do need to pay someone, and we do need to pay them a rate that makes sense and that is fair. So yeah, and I think Blood did a good job answering that. But again, just lots of people frustrated with technical issues, and again, I'm on the fence where it's like, there are obviously ways to solve that. I want to take steps to do that, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm not going to be like, we're messing up. It's like, we're doing the best we can. DBZ Donovan, I was just wondering whether the other guys changed all of their eyes to W's in the review scripts, or if that's just something that you do on the fly. Bloodworth says, you don't have to change eyes to W's if there are no eyes to begin with. And Winky Face from Bloodworth in chat. The rare Bloodworth Winky Face on Patreon. Yeah, Bloodworth will fix sometimes. He's like, we is weird here. Let's not do we. So I'll find myself writing even we into a review script and being like, I know there's a way I can word that where I don't have to use the word we. Ryan Smiley, I hope it isn't too nitpicky for a first comment, but I noticed at the end of videos when you discuss $1 Patreon support, you mentioned you get access to weekly updates, spoiler discussions, and exclusive shows. I would assume most people don't check out that fast, but why do you bury the lead on exclusive shows or spoiler discussions? If you or other people like me, then weekly updates is pretty low on what I want to spend money on. I understand it's a pre-recorded bit, but you add on to the end and it's probably not worth the trouble of changing the list, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Sure. We'll consider it, sure. Brandon KC, I enjoyed the latest Trailer Jones episode. Have you given any consideration to doing some kind of year in review? Maybe picking a trailer of the year or giving awards for different categories? Just a thought. I think I did this year because the beginning of January is a tough time for scheduling because everybody's taking time to play as much as they can in preparation for Game of the Year awards. People are coming back from vacation. We're getting back into, we got to do the showcase, and there's just like a lot of stuff that we have to do. Trailer Jones kind of gets bumped down the list a little bit. And so I think every January will just be like me looking back at the year of last year and talking about the best trailers, because we do that for the awards, but we don't really like dive deep into those. So maybe I'll look back at my favorite trailers and talk about why. But I think I did that for January. Correct me if I'm wrong. Josh Reed. Achieve It Yourself is an excellent show. I feel that it fills a noticeable gap in Easy A's content. Short, tightly edited, easily digestible, and simple to understand weekly videos. And it shows off not just the allies' personalities, but their skills. I genuinely believe it's the perfect show for Easy Allies. And for that reason, I believe making it Patreon exclusive is a mistake, and making it a mini-series is a mistake. That being said, I know that this is the type of thing a dedicated editor would be perfect for. So my question is, why haven't you got a dedicated editor yet? Because we can't pay them. Because we have 3 editors in a group, myself, Ian Hink, Don Casanova. In our opinion, with the amount of money we have right now to pay a person to edit, it's a shame. It would be like, I would feel gross paying somebody just that to work on it. That said, we're getting close. Like, we're getting to that point. Again, I don't want to make it a Patreon tier because I don't want to hire somebody and then when they're below that tier, like, well, we got to fire them, just like is the case with our 50K tier, which is admittedly a bit unusual in terms of if we dip slightly below, we're not going to just suddenly move out of the studio. But Josh, this is the classic exclusives issue where people are like, wait a minute, I enjoyed that exclusive. It shouldn't be exclusive. It's like, well, we're not going to make exclusives that you don't like. We're not going to make an exclusive that wouldn't encourage someone to give us money, and we get that. We got that with And For That Reason. We got that with Fancy 15, where people are like, this shouldn't be exclusive. It's like, something has to be exclusive. We have to do something that encourages people to finally, give us $1 and check something out. Like spoiler modes. There are people who are like, none of your spoiler modes should be exclusive. All of those should be public. And then we do some, creative thing that we came up for to do some exclusive. Nope, shouldn't be exclusive. Everybody should get that. Then nothing's exclusive. So, yeah, you're not wrong. And this is the second time somebody's brought up in this episode that we need to do more short format stuff to get more people into Easy A to help us be more easily digestible and discoverable. But there is that part of me that when somebody says, hey, that show shouldn't be exclusive, makes me feel like we're doing the right thing because we created something that will hopefully get some good word of mouth and hopefully, some people will enjoy. Obviously, I think, making something like Box Peak exclusive is not a good idea, but I think Achieve It Yourself is the right amount of planning and production. And keep in mind, like every single time we do an exclusive show, it is a test for what would work in our community and what would work outside of our community. And so, it's never too late to take And For That Reason and make the whole thing public and see what our greater audience would consider of that, or, how they would like it, or take something like Achieve It Yourself. If it is a resounding success, if we do get a lot of feedback from people who are like, man, I'm dying to have more of those, then produce some more. We don't do exclusive shows once a month because they are hard to produce. And so again, that like, oh, that thing that you did that was hard to do, you should do that because that's the type of thing you should do all the time. It just isn't, we are capable of doing it. David Curtis, Yo Jones, I recently read an article on a deep learning AI tech that is able to replicate a real human voice with near perfect precision. Finally. Some allies in the past have expressed concern that one day in the future, the voice of EZA will step away for one reason or another. If in 5 to 10 years, deep learning AI could perfectly replicate your voice, Huber, for example, could write a script and have the AI read it for you, with the EZA audience being none the wiser. Does this excite you? Scare you? Would you allow the allies to use your voice in their reviews? Totally. Your voice could be used for the next 100 years. Sounds great. Or longer. Even better. Perhaps you may have to look into some kind of copyright protection for the unique waveforms of your voice, lest random YouTube channels begin popping off with your voice narrating reviews, critiquing trailers, etc. I would love it. The future is crazy. It is. And it's kind of a personal question, but I guess it's kind of business as well. Like, we only got 2 more business questions. So, yeah, that's some deep fakes, man. That's crazy. Crazy tech, crazy future. No, I would love it. I mean, I think in general, I'm 40. Do you want reviews from me when I'm 80? Do you want to be like, Borderlands 10 is really fun? Like, it just, I gotta step away at some point. Gotta back out. Gotta cash in my chips. Yeah. I saw, I think, a Bob Barker. There's a really great Price is Right documentary on TV. And Bob Barker is a very old man now and looks very old. And so it's interesting to see him at that age and get to a point where he could retire. I think he'd been on TV for 50 years and he'd been on Price is Right for 35 or something like that. There was some like really nice round number for both his career and his time on the show. And he was like, all right, time to take off. I want a WrestleMania 75 review from you, Jones. It would be fun to have like deepfake Jones, to have like a review show we do that is specifically not me. It's like this might sound like Jones, but it's not. So people, they will have a lower third the whole time. It would be like the following was not recorded by Brandon Jones and is intended only for entertainment purposes. Yeah, I'm always looking for a way out for sure. I'm always looking for that pull on my parachute to just bail entirely. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Mikhail Anyel, curious how the discussion went when you chose to have a pre-talk of the PC press conference instead of Upload's E3 VR showcase. There was not a talk because when we picked our schedule, Uploads was not a thing. They had not announced that yet. For people that don't know, there's a company called Uploads that's doing a showcase of VR stuff, kind of similar to how Kind of Funny is doing their showcase, but it'll specifically just be VR. So when we picked our schedule, it wasn't on the list. We were pretty locked in at this point, and so we didn't want to like throw some stuff in there. Like if announcements happen that are interesting that we will discuss off camera, whether we want to, bring those up, and then we'll bring those into the show later. But I think one of the biggest reasons is the PC E3 press conference is something that we know what to expect. There's a precedent for it. Epic Games is sponsoring it this year, so who knows what's going to happen in that regard. But we kind of know what to expect, but we don't know what Uploads is going to be like. It might be like a lot of talking and not a lot of like showing off stuff. It might start with 20 minutes of just hardware specs. Like, we don't know. And so generally we'll kind of lean more toward the thing that we know what to expect, especially for producing live coverage. Discarded Digit, please consider premiering the E3 betting special on Twitch, even if you have to give short notice of the stream. Chat wants to share the hype, and betting specials seem like more fun with the live audience. All right. I will, again, it's betting specials are produced by Kyle Bossman and Michael Huber, so I will pass on that to them, and I wrote it down as a takeaway already. And that's business questions, folks. Easy A's like the mob, Jones. Only one way out. Oh no, bury me in the studio. Man. Harsh. It's like Miller's Crossing. I just imagine me like running through a forest, like in a zoot suit, just like, and Huber's following you with a shotgun. Your time has come, Jones. If they buried you in the studio, would that mean you're in the ceiling or the people below you? I'm in the brick. I'm in the like Haunting at Hill House. I'm scratching at the brick. Personal questions. Nick Blunt with a quick and easy one. I put this in the Cup of Jones Q&A. What breed of dog is Sophie? Mini Australian Shepherd. Classic question. So that question's now been added to the Cup of Jones Q&A, and whenever I post that, I'll never have to answer that question again. Alexander Zirianov. I have a question about Season 8 of Game of Thrones. Personally, I think it's great, and everyone I know thinks the same. Well, isn't that nice? But even if I wanted more character development and fewer storytelling jumps, I don't think it's possible. Budget is limited, and all production departments work around the clock, so you can't make the show longer. I think a lot of people made the argument that you could because they decided on the budget. They were like, no, we want 6 episodes, and HBO was like, okay. Budget is limited and all production departments work around the clock, so you can't make the show longer. And you need to spend some time on a couple of new storylines to make Season 8 an actual season instead of a giant epilogue. And you have to wrap up stories for dozens of characters with their individual plots, but you need to keep intrigue until the final episode to not lose the audience. Since you're a writer, a producer, a performer, and a rational person, I would very much like to hear your opinion about whether it was possible or not to make a better show within the given production constraints. Totally. Yeah, it's... Yeah, no, they could have done a better job. There's no question in my mind. Just because they still focused on, man, I know people are like, whoa, we get into the Game of Thrones talk? I'm going to keep this as non-spoiler as possible. I can do it. I believe I can do it. I'm not going to even mention character names or anything. I'm just going to say episode numbers. And I'm not even going to say what happened in the episode. But I guess it's episode 5, right? Yeah. The very end of episode 5. Not like the end that you're thinking, okay, I know the ending. No, like the very end. The last thing you saw in 5. What the heck did that mean? Like there are moments like that that's like, what? Why are we focusing on this? So why are you spending 10 minutes focusing on this one thing? Or why did we get like it? So it's not only that like, oh, really? That's the only time, there was that that one scene where that one person was eating and that other very important character came over and sat down with that person he was eating, who was like, oh, I don't want to talk to you. And then they talked about their history together. That scene sucked. It's like, so it's not just the time. Then there's the time that those two characters were on horseback, same guy, the person that was sitting at the table, and those two characters are on horseback and they're walking to, that city. And they're like, hey, what are you up to? And like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing. What the hell was that scene? Like there are scenes that they already had time to set up, that it was like, this is it. These are the time that these two characters are going to have together, and there you go. They were set up in such a weird way of like, like even near the end of just kind of directing, like, here's where we're going to go with this. No, we're actually not going to do anything with that. Like to me, would I have wanted more time? Totally. Like, would it have been great if that thing was 50 hours long? Of course. Do I want to read that book? I very much want to read that book. But so to me, it's not a question of like, there should have been more time spent. Like, I think that's obviously a very insensitive, not really thinking it all the way through, analysis of the final season of Game of Thrones. I'm just like, there should have been one whole episode with just Sansa. But, when you see what they spent time on, so like the episodes 1 and 2 building up to what happened in 3, which was, crazy. I like that they took 2 episodes. So that's an example of something they did well. Like episode 1 of this last season was very much like, oh, hey, everybody. And like, I thought that was great. But episode 1 was probably my favorite episode of the whole season, because it just did a great job. It had a great ending and did a great job of like, here's where we're at with everybody. And then it just kind of, now that I'm done with everything and I know where everyone wound up, I think they spent time on the wrong things. Not that they needed more time, but they spent time focusing on stuff that was done in a very strange way. I think it was possible to make a better show given production constraints. To talk about it any more elaborate than that, I'm gonna have to get into specifics. So. And I'm bummed that we never did, and maybe I can mention this now, we are in personal questions, but apologies for not doing a Detective Pikachu spoiler mode and not doing a Game of Thrones spoiler mode. Didn't have a lot of interest in a Game of Thrones spoiler mode. It was really Damiani and me. All of the other allies were like, you know what, I'm just really frustrated with it, and I just don't feel like talking about it. We're like, okay. So that's why that didn't happen, and Kyle Bossman is why Detective Pikachu didn't happen. I was like, I gotta get Kyle on that. Kyle or bust, and Kyle does not want to see that film or does not want to talk about it. I'm like, all right. So maybe one day, maybe 10 years from now, we'll do a Detective Pikachu spoiler mode. Detective Pikachu 2. Maybe we'll do spoiler mode for the sequel. The Champ. People are disappointed with Game of Thrones. Here we go. I'm not disappointed in what happened. I'm more disappointed with how it happened. My question to you is, what games disappointed you the most to the same degree, or worse than Game of Thrones? For me, Mass Effect 3 still makes me rage to this day. The games were perfect until the final hour of 3. Worse than Game of Thrones, the story just went out the window. How they got there and what happened made no sense. Games? I don't know. Games? What games had an ending that I didn't like? I don't know. I mean, there are some Telltale campaigns I wasn't particularly satisfied with, but hard to tell if that was my fault or the writing, because I don't think I'd ever gone back and played a season of Telltale again, like a second time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to do maybe one of these days. The one that I can think of is the game that effed me, the classic Game Trailers Countdown. If you've never seen that, we made a list of games that had their way with us through technical issues or things that weren't communicated well. I'm gonna hopefully have a redemption with one of them. The game First Person Shooter 13 that came out in the PS2 Xbox era. That game screwed me. But Fable 3 was like brutal, because at the end they were like, so the end's coming up and you're just going to need a lot of money. But to make a lot of money, you got to be mean to people. And I'm like, you don't have to be mean to people to make a lot of money. It's just going to take longer. And so I could make money, but I could also, independent of that, move the story along. And the story would move along at increments that made no sense. So like when you would finish a story chapter, it would be like 2 months later, 2 weeks later, 2 days later, 2 years later. And you're like, whoa, I never know. Like whenever I finish the story, I don't know where we're going next. And it's kind of tricky story-wise, like expectation-wise, not to have that guide. And they were like, oh, because they're telling you how close it is to when this evil force will show up. This whole time I'm just slowly making money. I got all my properties and they're all turning in money. And I'm like, I think I'm going to get the best of both worlds. I think I'm going to get the good ending where I'm going to be nice to everybody and not have to, be a brutal leader because I just want to make a lot of my tax people really heavily. Like, no, everyone's going to be happy. Everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows. And then the story was like, it's 6 months until the war. And I was like, okay, I'm probably going to get one more story chapter because if it's 6 months away, I'm going to get like one more story chapter and then it's going to be the thing. And the game auto saved, so you couldn't manually save in Fable 3. And then I was like, okay, 6 months from now, I'll probably jump to like 2 weeks before the war or something. And then I finished that story chapter, and they were like, well, it's the war. I was like, wait, whoa, you just jumped 6 months. And like, what, the war is now? They're like, yep, it's the war. I hope you made enough money because you can't make any more money. And I was like, they're like, nope, you can't use any of that money. And I was like, I made 96% of the money I needed to pay off the war. They're like, you can't make any more money. I'm like, I can't just use some of the money that I said. Nope. Where you're totally cut off from your bank now. You just, nope, go do the ending. Go do the ending. Yep, we auto saved over your save file. Just go get your bad ending. And I was like, all right, thanks, campaign. So that, man. And you can go back and maybe have another reworded version of that if you want to go back and watch our countdown if it's still up. But Fable 3. M-Bun, based on that awful take, I'd love to go back and replay Fable 3. The game was fun otherwise. M-Bun, based on that awful take, I'm not sure Jones understands how much work goes into planning and making the better Super Mario Maker levels, as well as how small a percentage of the total levels made feature clever or interesting design and usage of the available assets and special properties between them. Context. Last Cup of Jones, I talked about how I gave Super Mario Maker on the Wii U an 8 when I reviewed it, I believe, because I was disappointed in a couple things, which I'll address coming up. This is a real shame considering how many allies within EZA are skilled at this and how Don's design lab even used to be a thing. I think Kyle, Don, or Ian really need to sit Jones down with the game and run him through some of the interesting things people have done with what's available, because Jones is clearly undervaluing what is there and people's creativity employing it. I'm not. The Nintendo World Championship sections feature the game. Nintendo World Championship was not a thing when I reviewed this game. Featuring the game would be a good, easy watch for seeing the taste of what skill creators can do. Also, I'm a little surprised how negative Jones came off with complaining about the lack of a story mode in the first game, showcasing ways to build, then acknowledging the second game has this, but acting like it doesn't matter if it has it now solely because the first game did not. It matters that it has it now. It's just like the campaign in Battlefront. It just should have been in the original game. It's cool that it has it now. I'm excited about this stuff. I don't know why my impression came off is that I'm not excited about Super Mario Maker 2. I think it looks amazing. I just think, people are excited about it now, as in people are communicating about it being in Super Mario Maker 2 by saying, I would have never thought of that. And like, I mentioned that in my review, that's why I brought it up. That like, I felt that was absent from the first game. I'm excited it's in the second game, but I think it should have been the first one. That early access comment also makes you sound like one of those, this isn't a true sequel people. Not curious what that early access comment was. Same as we saw many of between Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate, or even between Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2. I think this is definitely a true sequel. Yeah, yeah. Super Mario Maker 2 is a sequel to Mario Maker 1, 100%. I think this trap is easy to fall into when you're not well versed enough in a series to see everything the developers have tweaked between entries, as well as what new things are added. I think Nintendo specifically did a great job of addressing this in the latest Super Mario Maker 2 Direct, which I admittedly have not seen, by cutting it up to sections of old staples for newcomers and then digging into exactly what's new in a section labeled as such. M-Bun, I have crossed you. I'm sorry that I have spoken ill of Super Mario Maker and that you found that frustrating to hear. I think Super Mario Maker is amazing. I was speaking specifically about my review, about I think the week that I had with Super Mario Maker leading up to launch, and then critically what I had to say about what was available at launch and how all of that material was gathered. If we are several years after that and people have been producing amazing stuff, like I've gone through episodes of Don's Design Lab. I've played a lot of that, crazy creative stuff that we've seen. Like I followed very intently the war between Dan Reichert and Patrick Klepek, where they were sending levels back and forth. Like I haven't played a lot of these levels that I've seen, but I have seen a lot of these levels that people have created. But it's tricky when you're reviewing a creation game, and I'm coming up to be reviewing Super Mario Maker 2 at the end of June, and so it's going to be I'm going to have definitely a much better idea of what can be produced now than I believe anybody really had. I even think some of the people that are championing, not actually in championships, but people that are singing the praises of Super Mario Maker, also probably didn't even realize at the time what could have been possible, with that tech. I just think I was comparing it to all of the other, to Little Big Planet, to Disney Infinity, to all of the other games that I had played that also had a similar component. And where I found the story thing most surprising was because when you have Little Big Planet, this engine is being created from the ground up. Sackboy never was a thing before Little Big Planet. Little Big Planet 1 introduced the world to Sackboy. Disney Infinity introduced the world, obviously not to those characters, but to to these character models. Like, there had never been a version of that Sorcerer Mickey before that had those abilities, that moved around in that way. And when you went into those design labs, there's never been a level builder quite like this in terms of how accessible it was and all of the stuff that you could do. And so all of those things had to be built from the ground up. Not only the tech needed to place those elements and to make those structures work in gameplay, but the actual design of the characters themselves. And then on top of all of that, they've added their own levels and story modes and voiceover and all of this other stuff to explain how all of that stuff works. When you have Mario, all this stuff's already built. It's like all of this is created. The sprites, the sound effects, all of this. There's so many assets that are already just done for Super Mario Maker that you just plop in there. It's not something like Super Smash Brothers. We're like, this is a whole new design of Link. This is a whole new design of Samus. Like, this is the Smash Brothers variant of this. We're like, whoa, they like totally repurpose it. They're just like, we took the Mario from Super Mario Brothers and boop, and we put him in the level. And then there's little blocks, and then you just add the blocks in, and then we're just giving you the power to do it. And that was really exciting as an initiative for Nintendo. But again, compared to all of these things, M-Bun says the assets are created, but how people use them makes a massive difference. It does, but you could say that about anything. You could say that about any franchise. And what I think is unfortunate is a lot of people are really obsessed with Super Mario Maker, where a lot of people were not obsessed with Little Big Planet, and a lot of people are not obsessed with Dreams. A lot of people are not obsessed with Disney Infinity. So with Super Mario Maker, the advantage that Super Mario Maker has is it's Mario, and it's Mario sold to a Nintendo audience. So this crowd is going to get crazy about this game, where that same audience could have gotten crazy if they wanted to about Little Big Planet, about Disney Infinity, about Dreams, but they didn't because they're Mario fans. And so if Little Big Planet or had the support that Mario Maker had from a community that is as obsessed with platformers and Mario as they are, we would probably be having the same conversation about these other games, being like, they would be in the same position that I am with Disney Infinity. M-Bun, I'm in your camp. I know you weren't criticizing my review, just how I spoke about it, but I was speaking about it in my review, which is why I brought it up. I'm in the same way about Disney Infinity, where I like Disney Infinity just didn't get the love that I felt that it deserved. It didn't get as much attention from other Disney fans that weren't necessarily interested in the merchandise. Didn't get a lot of interest from action fans, Star Wars fans, Marvel fans. A lot of people didn't show up, and obviously enough people didn't show up for that game, to continue it into a year 4. But at the same time, this is just my, I'm trying to bring a different voice to it. And I tried to preface it last week, M-Bun, by also saying, like, this is my stupid hot take about Mario Maker. Like, this is just my analysis from this, because it was, I did get a little frustrated seeing, like, how everyone was in love with Super Mario Maker, and everyone was like, this is great. Wow, making levels is fun. And then, like, a year earlier, I was streaming Toy Box Tuesday and nobody cared, And then all of a sudden, now that it's Mario, oh my God, how ingenious. Like, oh, I can make him jump on something. Whoa. And it's just like, okay. Like, I've been doing this for years and years and years and years, dating back to the PlayStation 3, the beginning of the PlayStation 3's life cycle. And it was hard to drum up interest. And so I think a lot of what people what people identify as community creativity, and the desire to really drill into a specific tool set and use it to absolutely maximize, all of the crazy stuff that you can do with it. Look at something like Dishonored, or where people have done speedrun videos of Dishonored, and you're like, whoa, I never thought that something could be that elaborate. Or fighting games where they can take, or like Overwatch or League of Legends, where like you can, stretch a character's abilities far past what the developers, possibly even intended. And after the fact, you can look back and be like, wow, that's really interesting that those tools can support that. Breath of the Wild also comes to mind in terms of all the crazy physics puzzles and stuff that you can do. But it's tricky to figure out, is that based on the quality of the game itself, or is that based on the ingenuity of the community? Or obviously it's a little bit of both, but I think a lot of people, it's tricky. And a lot of these games that I'm also talking about, like Dishonored having those abilities, Breath of the Wild, having all of that, physics that you can play around with. They also have the story. They also have a structure. The Super Mario Maker just doesn't have a structure. It's just kind of like blah, just make stuff. And if you compare that to all of the other making games where you can make stuff, is lacking that. I mean, they decided that they didn't need to do that. It was surprising for me, considering how many Mario things I had enjoyed over the years that introduced elements to me in a really fun, creative way. And Mario Maker just kind of throws them at you. But everything that I said has nothing to do, has absolutely no bearing on how I feel about that community and all of the levels that they've created and all the cool stuff that they've done. It was just a question of what that game was like when it launched. Because that's where my mind is now with Dreams, and that's where my mind's going to be when Mario Maker 2 comes out. Like I said, I'm going to be informed much more in my Mario Maker 2 review of what the potential is and what we can expect people to create out of these things. Much like when I reviewed Disney Infinity 2.0 and 3.0, I was like, okay, well, now we kind of know what people are going to do with this because we've seen what they've done. And so when they add these new elements to Disney Infinity 2.0, it's like, this is a really important tool. This will get a lot of use because that's something that... people are going to be interested in. Man, Emba and I just feel like I pissed you off even more. I just wanted to... I'm very passionate about building games, about games where they allow you to build levels. Yeah, Brandon sounds salty. I didn't mean to be salty. I just... just salt. Chat is just nothing but salt right now. Yeah, so that's it. It's just my hot, silly, stupid take on Mario Maker. Jovan Strukovic, I remember way back when there was a cozy outdoor episode of Cup of Jones where your words of advice were to get out into nature and take care of your health. Well, I've been hiking almost every day for the last 2 years. Not purely because of that episode, but I do admit it had an impact on me taking the first step. I think it's time to turn it up a notch. I'm going to try overnight camping. I can't believe you've been hiking every day for 2 years and you haven't been camping yet. With so much information, I've never hiked that much. You've probably hiked more now than I've hiked in my entire life. That's insane. With so much information suggesting different things, do you have any words of advice for someone who's never camped before? I'm taking my dog, a backpack with a tarp tent, sleeping bag, food, and a few extra items like a saw, knife, and fuel canister stove. Side question. I know you usually leave this to Amanda, but easiest food to make when you camped on those 9-day hikes. Oatmeal, just any kind of oats is good because you just water on it. Anything that's like grain and food packet. So obviously like ramen, mac and cheese, anything that you can just heat up water, put something in water that cooks, put that into a bowl, put something on top of that. Chili is really great. Obviously for camp, you like chili cookouts. But yeah, it's interesting. You're kind of diving into the deep end a little bit because if you're hiking in, especially with an animal, if you're hiking to your campsite and then setting up camp and then hiking out, that's kind of hard mode. I would almost, because I've never done that with Sophie, and I would actually be nervous to do that with Sophie in terms of just making sure we had everything. We've taken Sophie camping twice. Both times we drove there. And so we got in a car and then drove to the campsite and then parked in a parking space by the campsite, unloaded everything from the car, had fun camping, loaded everything back up in the car, and then drove home. And so you hiking in is pretty intense. So I would, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from camping over the years, or the best lessons that I've taken with me are just mistakes, just going out camping and being like, oh, whoops, like we totally forgot this thing, but we have our car. And so if we really need it, we can drive into town and get something. And so I would say, I mean, you might already be planned and you might already reserved the campsite and you're like, hey, the train has left the station, I'm going. But if you can, I would do just one-nighter camping trip, maybe do a 2-night trip so you can just you'd spend a whole day actually at the campsite. But I would do that so you can practice So you can get to know your tent, get to know your needs, and just kind of what you wish you had around you. Make a list of stuff while you're there, like, oh, I totally forgot this. Then go on a long-term hike, then go on a hiking trip where you're camping multiple days, possibly in different locations, and actually carrying your pack in. Because, yeah, if you're carrying food for an animal, food for yourself across multiple days, a tent. Like when I went on long terms, we didn't carry all of our food at once. We had stations that we picked the food up at every 3 or 4 days. And so, you know, carrying 9 days worth of food with you, I mean, that's like over 100 pounds of weight, you know, when you have your tent and your sleeping bag, and cooking supplies, pots, pans, you know, storage containers, you know, water, not to mention if you want to like bring your Switch or something, or books, or, you know, like you just got, that's a lot in your bag, where it's just really convenient just to throw all that in a, it's kind of like going big and then going small. So like if you do car camping, then I just think you'll have a much clearer idea of how to do the small creative camping, because a lot of that is, like you said, like what are your recommendations? A lot of that is based on your preferences. Like I can't tell you how you will be comfortable while you're camping. I think only you know. I don't need a pillow. I don't need a big sleeping bag. Some people do. Some people need a huge tent. You know, some people need a lot of accommodations when they do stuff like that. So, so yeah, there you go. I would recommend, if you have never been camping, to do it that way, just once. Blood chiming in between questions. Pretty good indication that the Control preview is hitting new audiences. Didn't know Christian Slater does have so much knowledge about video games. Nice. Should definitely do a Heather's reshoot with Brad in the Christian Slater role. That's funny. And before I move on, again, just love and respect to M-Bun. I feel like I've really like crossed M-Bun. I'm sorry that I spoke negatively of Super Mario Maker. I just solid my opinions. I care about building games. I think one of the other things about Mario Maker is that I felt like I was the only guy in the world. I felt I was the only person who like had that opinion. And it's tricky because I think when you're critiquing something about a game, it's tough to avoid those critiques from spreading out and seeming like you're critiquing other things about the game. And so when I criticize a launch a day, again, I gave the game an 8, so it's a good score. When I have issues with a launch one game, I don't want any of that to reflect on the community of that game, the creations of that game, the existence of that game now, any sequels to that game. All of that stuff is great. Asbo Zapruder. Hi, Jones. Since it's officially too darn hot out, it's not. It's like it's very cloudy in LA today. It's kind of muggy though. I thought I'd go with Cole Porter this week. Anything Goes, Kiss Me Kate, and a bit of a curveball, DeLovely, the biopic of Porter starring Kevin Kline. I know nothing about DeLovely. I do know the song DeLovely though, which is from Anything Goes. I don't know DeLovely though. I think I'm familiar with it. That's awesome that Kevin Kline was in it though. God, I would love to see Kevin Kline on stage. I've never seen Kevin Kline in a play. What a treat. Kiss Me Kate is based on The Taming of the Shrew. It is about people putting on a production of Taming of the Shrew. Or is it just Taming of the Shrew? I think it's like isn't it like a theater? It's like a play within a play. But if any of you have ever seen The Taming of the Shrew, it's a wonderfully sexist play. It's basically like it's like a man and a woman. They're like, I don't like you. Well, I don't like you. And then at the end, the man's like, do what I say. And the woman's like, okay. And all the other ladies are like, hooray. And you're like, what? Like, it's a tough one. It's a tough Shakespeare play to do because it's one of those where, you know, Shakespeare plays wrap up in very interesting ways. You know, none more so than The Taming of the Shrew. But Kiss Me Kate is, yeah, based on that. And I have seen Kiss Me Kate on stage actually, and I don't remember a lot from Kiss Me Kate. I gotta be honest. I'm trying to remember, is Too Darn Hot from Kiss Me Kate, or is that Crazy for You? What's Too Darn Hot? Too Darn Hot's from something. It's everyone from the show is up on the rooftop of the theater, and it's too darn hot. I can't remember. Taming is a comedy. It is. Oh, 10 Things I Hate About You is a much better version. It probably is actually. Sounds like I'm okay with M-Bun. Okay. M-Bun. Love you. But Anything Goes. Classic Anything Goes. Anything Goes is great because Anything Goes I was in, and Anything Goes Amanda was in. We were both in Anything Goes. When I was in Anything Goes, I played the role of Cornelius. No, not Cornelius Hackle. He's in Hello Dolly, which was the show I did after Anything Goes. I played Sir Evelyn Oakley. I was British. I had fun doing a horrible British accent. I was... in like fourth grade or so, fifth grade. No. That was in junior high. So that was, I think I was in sixth grade when I did that, sixth or seventh grade. And Sir Evelyn Oakley. And I was the guy that you don't want the hero to wind up with. It's fun to be that role. I always feel bad for that guy when like you meet the female character and then you meet the male character and you're like, oh, I really want him to get with her, but she's dating that terrible guy. I just saw Take Me Home Tonight, which my buddy Dan Fogler is in. And Chris Pratt is that guy. He's like that boyfriend that you're like, not him. So it's fun to like be this uptight British guy where the whole audience is like, not this guy. And he sings a song. I don't remember his song, but I remember I was terrified. It was like my first big lead that I'd gotten a show. And I remember we had music, we got our music, sheet music, and I'm flipping through and I see my name and I was like, wait, I'm singing something? I was like, oh, I'm terrified. And then slowly but surely got better at it. Anything Goes is fun. And Amanda did a gender swap with her role because she was the boss of the male lead. So the female lead is engaged to me, and you want her to end up with the guy, and his boss is usually played by a guy, but was played by Amanda. I think there's like a part where she had to come out in scantily clad clothing. I don't remember why. I think she like loses her glasses, and so she's like not wearing clothes and like wanders out on stage or something. And it's funny because the guy that was in our production when I Did Anything Goes kind of looked like a male version of Amanda. Like they're both, I keep smacking this. They're both around the same height. I think this bar is up too high. There we go. But Anything Goes is fun. Obviously DeLovely's a good song. I think everybody knows the, Anything Goes. People know that song when they hear it. If you're like, I don't really know Anything Goes, you do. It's the beginning of Temple of Doom. Dun 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 dun. That's Anything Goes. Bon Voyage. Yeah, it's a fun show. It's very goofy. It's a great show for like a children's theater to do because the sets are very basic. You just like build a boat. Build like what looks like the back of a boat. Couple cabins. Done. Then you can do the whole show. Logan Tawes, if you had all the time in the world to play any and all games you wanted or to watch any and all movie TV shows you wanted, which one do you think you would choose if you weren't allowed to do the other ever again? Whoa. If you had all the time in the world. So, yeah, I guess that means I live forever. Because, man, if you tried to play every single game that was in existence, that would take thousands of years. That would take a very, very, very long time. Especially if to play any and all games you wanted, it's like, well, does that mean I can only play like one class in an MMO up to the level cap, or can I play all the classes? It's like, how much can I replay games? I guess it sounds like I can. I'd probably do games. Games are too much fun. And I think the thing that's fun about games, but it's weird because it's like, what if my kid like wants to watch Star Wars? I'm like, I can't. I gotta leave the room. I can't. What happens when somebody puts on a movie? Do I vanish? Do I like teleport somewhere else where no movie is being played? We might get to a point in this society where I can't live if I can't watch films because you just watch. It's like then you can't be in Times Square because there's movies playing up on the monitors. I don't know. I want to know the specifics of this. But yeah, it would probably be games. Morgan Wahala, what are some challenges that will be new or unique to your children's generation? What will you do to prepare them for said challenges? What are some challenges that will be new or unique to your children's generation? Well, it's not new or unique because it is a challenge that it has faced mankind ever since, the beginning when we were trying to build houses and protect them from, protect our huts from the floods and the cold winds and storms. But the weather on this planet is going to go insane. I mean, it's just going to, if I'm planning on living until, 2050, by the end of this century, this Earth is going to be in a really, really, really bad place in terms of flooding and temperature shifts. It's basically going to start being a lot of places where the Earth is just flat out uninhabitable. And so, is California going to be one of those? I don't know, but they were certainly going to see a shift in terms of populations moving. And I'm not trying to get political here. This is just going to happen. Where, populations can be like, God, I can't live on that small island. I got to live here. Well, now that, Puerto Rico's overpopulated. Well, now all those people got to move over here. And so you're going to start to see like just massive migrational shifts. Yeah, and it's not the kind of thing of like, you're going to see this unless we get our act together with the environment. Going to happen, folks. We're way too late. It's just going to happen. We can maybe make strides to make things better, but in terms of the planet being in horrible shape and it's only going to get worse, that we are on that slope. Your pair of skis are now straight. You're not doing the wedge anymore. Your skis are parallel and you are flying down that mountain. So there's that. I think obviously there is the question that I didn't have to. I think a lot about not having the smartphone in college. Oof, I would have been in bad shape. My grades would have been terrible in high school if I had a smartphone. Ooh, I had a phone like my junior year, dating myself considerably, but it was in like the late 90s. And so I graduated high school in 1997. And so I had like a Casio, like chunky phone. And then, it wasn't until I graduated college I think I had a smartphone. I think I had a smartphone in college. It's crazy. So if I was in high school and I had like video games, I had like Grand Theft Auto 3 on my phone, that would have been brutal. And so it's going to be really, really, really hard. I see Amanda is definitely Amanda definitely doesn't want to have the iPad on in the car, doesn't want to have you see like minivans where they just have the TV monitors like on the backs of the seats. She's like, no, I don't want to just like put on a movie and shut the kid up. And I believe in that. I think I want to make an effort to do that, but I don't know if I'm just going to buckle at some point and just be like, look, Junior, here, just, watch this show on your iPad, be quiet. Because I don't want that kid to get addicted to that app. I see, on one hand, it's really fun seeing kids in tech, like kids learning keyboards at a much younger age than I did, meaning alphabet keyboards, and kids understanding how apps work, how Wi-Fi works, how technology works that I didn't start experimenting with until my 20s or 30s, that they at age 5 are like mastered. Like, it's cool and it's neat to think of the next generation have their brains being wired a little bit differently, and them, growing up knowing that you can have access to all information. Like, even though I grew up in the, was a teenager in the 90s, I still knew that like the internet was close. I still knew that like we could, we're getting to that point where we'll be able to search for any piece of information and find any image we want and find any video we want. And so that's why, like, when I graduated from college and that world started to happen, I was like, I'm ready, like GameTrailers.com, let's do this. But I worry about just the addictive qualities of that. I know I'm extremely addicted to media. I'm addicted to games. I'm addicted to TV. I'm addicted to movies. I'm addicted to entertainment, and when entertainment just gets easier and easier and easier to consume. I didn't even have internet in high school. Yeah, neither did we. I had a typing class in high school. Do they still have typing in high school? I don't know. Typing is now, this is typing. So yeah, the addiction to media and having the water world, basically, those are like my two major concerns. Not to be sad. Daniel Ribeiro with Mike Buddy, one of the original founders of GameTrailers.com, calling me right now. Buddy, is he there? No? Let me call him back. Let's have a Mike Buddy cameo on Cup of Jones. This is, no kidding. This is one of the guys who created GameTrailers.com. Stopped by the studio finally, and he's calling me during Cup of Jones. I want to know what Buddy... Hello, Buddy. Buddy, I'm live right now. I'm doing Cup of Jones. I'm doing my weekly live show right now. Is there anything you want to tell the patrons of Easy Allies right now, Mike Buddy?
Yes, I want to tell them that Brandon Jones is just as sweet and lovely in person as he is on the air. It's true.
Well, they know this. We have, yeah. Well, we have, yeah. We try to be very transparent and honest about these things. But is that all you got? What you want, bro? Yes, we need to figure out those specifics. I'll call you back about that. But yeah, I have plans too. The conversation we had, I told Amanda about, and she gave me a thumbs up. So Yeah, and we should figure that out because E3's next week, and we should figure that out. He's having a birthday at Yosemite. We're going camping. Speaking of camping. Oh, nice. Nice. Cool. Oh, you did not hear that at all. Oh, Buddy just said I'm great. No, you literally did. That's what he said. Wait, can I turn up the volume now? Okay, one more time. You scream it this time, Buddy. Scream it.
Freaking great!
Thanks, Buddy. I'll talk to you later. Special guest, Mike Buddy. Mike Buddy. Mike Buddy. Wherever I go, he's gonna go. Mike Buddy. Mike Buddy. Mike Buddy and me. Daniel Ribeiro. Today, Square Enix confirmed Crystal Dynamics' Marvel Avengers will be revealed at their E3 2009 press conference after 2 years and a half from its announcement back in January 2017. That's great news, and I'm very excited for it. Hopefully, it will be great as Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man. A few gameplay ideas that came to me are flying and shooting lasers and rockets with Iron Man, similar to Anthem's javelins, but then you can also choose to be on the ground as Captain America fighting with his shield and fists, or as Black Widow with her martial arts and gadgets, similar to Batman in the Batman Arkham games. Hulk could scale walls, similar to Spider-Man in Marvel's Spider-Man, or crash through walls with his strength, similar to Adam Jensen in Deus Ex Human Revolution and Mankind Divided. I like these examples. Thor could fight with his hammer, similar to Kratos in God of War, who can fight with both his Leviathan axe in hand or by throwing it. The difference here would be that Thor could control his hammer in midair, being able to do combos either with his bare hands, wielding his hammer, using a hammer in midair, or using his bare hand and hammer simultaneously. These are just a few ideas I came up with in a few minutes, so I'm sure the developers must have created even more creative and fun ways to play. At least they should have in 2.5 years of development. Also, any developer of a superhero game should look not only at those blockbuster games I mentioned, but also at the Lego superhero games as well, some of which nail having many superheroes in a single game. I will get to that in a second. Temper those expectations, folks, like Lego Marvel Superheroes. Sorry if this is an abrupt turn, but I will change the subject from Marvel and Avengers here because this news also made me think of another developer and another brand, namely Rocksteady and DC. I'm a huge Batman fan and I love the Batman Arkham games. If Rocksteady is working on a superhero team game, which they most likely are, then I can understand why it would take time to nail down all the different gameplay styles, as well as creating a world, enemies, and physics that can accommodate many superhero abilities like flying, fast speed, super strength, teleporting, etc. Though these same challenges are also present in an Avengers game, bearing in mind that many of the type of gameplay elements I mentioned earlier would also work for superheroes in a Justice League or Teen Titans game. For example, Iron Man plays similarly as Superman Starfire, and Captain America Black Widow as Batman Robin. What would you want from such a game? And what would you expect from it? By expect, I mean something that has to be in the game. Like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Green Lantern need to be in a Justice League game. Sometimes Green Lantern's not. Otherwise, it wouldn't really feel like like one to a lot of fans, myself included. But also, something like Superman needs to be able to fly. Otherwise, that's not really Superman you're playing. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about Rocksteady because they could be making a Turtles game. We don't know. But let's talk about Avengers, baby. Let's hope Avengers isn't just a match 3. No, Avengers, I think, is going to be Ultimate Alliance Plus. But I think there's a give and take with a game like that. I think you have to decide what you want. Do you want a lot of characters, or do you want gameplay, like, functionality that's diverse? You know, where like one character flies, one character climbs, one character, hovers, one character's, Cap can just jump and grapple people and stuff. Because I think the larger you make the cast, the less stuff they can do. You brought up Lego Marvel Superheroes, which is amazing, but those characters aren't presented in a realistic way. It's all done very comedically, and so that's not what obviously what I think, Crystal Dynamics is going for. I think they want to make basically the ultimate photorealistic action hero experience. They're like, this is going to be basically like, you're going to hear this a lot in their the presentation and the developer interviews following this announcement of like, we're looking to make, this is just me guessing, I'm not saying this from any inside knowledge, but they're like, we're going to make, we really wanted to make the most, photorealistic epic experience. We want you to feel like Iron Man. You're going to hear that a lot. And I think because it's not, it's the Avengers specifically. So I don't think the X-Men are going to be in this. I don't think I think it's literally going to be the cast you saw in Endgame. It's just going to be, or in Infinity War. Like it's going to be all the Ant-Man, all the people that we wound up with, Black Panther, and then probably at launch it's going to be very bare bones. It's probably just going to be the core Avengers, and then they're going to add like the different phases. Probably going to go in the same order that they did. Black Panther will probably be at launch. I would be surprised if Black Panther's not, but I would be very surprised if there's a character that is not in those Marvel films that is in this Marvel game. I think I might be reading too much into this, but it just seems like they were waiting until, obviously they're waiting because they're developing the game, but I would expect it to be the core group with a favorite or two like Black Panther. Yeah, Ant-Man might be fun too, but Ant-Man, something very DLC-y about Ant-Man. Blood says if it's an Uncharted level-based game, I think you could potentially change characters every chapter and have each chapter designed around their abilities. What I'm hoping for is something where there's different area. It is a linear sense in terms of like you do this area, then this area, then this area. But I would like it if it was less of like the X-Men Legends and Marvel Ultimate Alliance kind of tunnel effect where you're just like, there's doors you can go off of, but you're trying to open switches to get through stuff. I would love it if you just got into bigger areas, because if I'm playing Iron Man and Thor, I don't want to hover. I want to fly. Like I want to look at the top of a building and fly up there. I want to do the, what does he tells Hawkeye to clench his butt cheeks or something? He's like clench up, Legolas, when he like flies up and then like flies somewhere. It'd be cool if like Iron Man and Thor can carry people, like I can actually carry Hawkeye and put him somewhere, or I can, do combo attacks and team up with people in fun, inventive ways. I think I'm ready for that, especially if we're getting Ultimate Alliance. Like I kind of want Ultimate Alliance to be the grab bag of like, okay, each character gets their one regular ability and then a strong attack and then some like ultimate attack and then a combo. And then of course they have their voiceover and other stuff, but like, that's really it. And so there's not a lot of effort. There's always effort, but it's not as hard to create a character and to add more people into this world as it would be for something like the Avengers game, which I think is going to be a little more complex in terms of having Iron Man really feel like Anthem, having Cap really feel like Arkham Knight, having these, taking the best parts of all of these games and just kind of trying to combine them into one. Fingers crossed. That's what I want. Master Pants. So is Blank Me Daddy out of the vault? No. I mean, I was never the one to put it officially in the vault, but man, that is easily one of my biggest regrets in the history of Easy Allies, is incorrectly saying that out loud that first time, because it's not funny. I know it might seem funny, but let it go. It's not funny. Red Sky, like Maria and Draco opera scene from Final Fantasy VI. Oh, the Maria and Draco opera scene from Final Fantasy VI is one of my favorite pieces by Nobuo Uematsu. I listened to the new arrangement on the recently released album Distant Worlds 5, More Music from Final Fantasy, and it featured additional narration, voice work, and scenes I hadn't heard before. Do you think a full-length opera adaptation could work, or is the current length and scope enough? If this were to be expanded upon, what would you like to see get more time and development? I don't know. I'd probably have to listen to that first. Yeah, a full opera is, I mean, what you see in the game is probably like 6% of an actual opera. You see like one number and you see like the end of one number and the beginning of the next scene, where that's not even like half of an act. So yeah, I don't think that could be blown out that much. And I feel bad because I'm like a big, Final Fantasy VI fan, but I've never once thought of ways that you can expand that opera. I kind of like how, I guess maybe I should have though, because they do give you like a little slice of it. It'd be fun. It'd be fun to get like some war scene. It'd be fun to get two guys singing on Chocobo back, like what vault, just the vault, the vault. Is that it? Is Blood saying what vault? Like we never put anything in the vault. How many Hawkeye arrow types? Oh, God, I'm going to play Hawkeye so much. I'm going to want to play Cap too, but Hawkeye. Yeah, it'd be fun if like two guys are like battling and they're on chocobos. And it's the kind of thing where like their legs are like, outside of the chocobo, the fake legs, and like their legs are the actual chocobo legs, like Big Bird style. And then they're just like, like having a fight. Because there's that one moment where the guy, Draco comes out on stage and then gets like, pummeled by three people riding chocobos across stage. Are those real chocobos? I don't know. Steve S. Will there be a spoiler mode for your visit to Star Wars Land in Batuu? I'm not going to do a spoiler mode, but I'll talk about it here on Cup of Jones, and I'll talk about it. I'll maybe try to sneak it into the podcast. But a spoiler mode would be weird because spoiler modes are for things that we don't want people to know. Whereas like, I'm going to tell you everything. Like there's not, I don't see like Smugglers Run Ride spoilers. I've been trying to stay away from pictures. I think, don't watch that stuff, obviously, if you are planning on going, but if you're not going to go for like a year or something, I don't see that necessarily as spoiler territory. The only vault I know was busted open a long time ago. Yeah, there might not be a vault anymore. Happy gaming. Zephyrmoon's telling me to be quiet. Oh, I think Zephyrmoon's telling Blood to be quiet. Shh, Blood. Happy gaming. I was curious about your thoughts on Disney repurposing old rides in Disneyland to fit new properties. I haven't personally been to Disneyland in a number of years, but to my understanding, Tower of Terror is going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. It is, they've changed it. Which Space Mountain was temporarily a Star Wars ride, and Pirates continues to get updates as new movies come out. I can't argue that it's definitely more financially reasonable to repurpose a ride instead of constructing an entirely new one. However, I go through a back and forth on this, where on one hand, it's great to see rides getting attention and new themes added, but alternatively, I would have hated to see Indiana Jones updated with Shia LaBeouf to reflect the most recent movie, or Haunted Mansion lose its history and theme and placement of something trendy. I'd much rather explain what the Twilight Zone is to a youth than have it be lost to the history of the ride's archive. Maybe I'm being too sentimental and nostalgic for the rides I rode the first time, and I'm being biased and unfair. What are your thoughts? I used to be... Talk about petitions. People like handing petitions out for things not to happen. I actually got a petition signed at my high school and in my local area as a child when Pirates got updated, when they updated Pirates first. They updated it recently to put Johnny Depp on it, but they updated it when I was in high school, adding all these new crazy things. And I was like, Pirates! I'm like, this is the last ride that Disney made, man. Come on! Respect the legacy. But over time, it's just something that I've completely had to let go. I did enjoy Tower of Terror. I enjoy the Guardians ride for separate reasons. There are things about Tower of Terror that I do miss. I actually don't know if it's been changed in Florida. The Tower of Terror that they have at Hollywood Studios is vastly superior to the Tower of Terror that we have here. And that would be a shame to see that one be changed to Guardians of the Galaxy as well. But I just think I think the thing that eventually, made me acquiesce to understanding that these things are just going to happen is, as I got older, realizing how different Disneyland is in terms of other theme parks, how different theme parks are in terms of just different types of entertainment. Mega sponsor slot open for July if anybody wants to get in as a mega sponsor. LaBeouf? What is it? How do you pronounce it? It's not Shia LaBeouf? Shia LaBeouf? Is it Buff? Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf. Sorry. Yeah, I would not like Shia LaBeouf. LaBeouf. Okay, Shia LaBeouf. Not a name I say very often. Not a name I say out loud. Sorry, Shia LaBeouf. But it's just so hard to get an audience, the audience that you need to support, financially maintaining all of this stuff, because there's just the laundry list that I can't imagine, especially when you're dealing with like animals and, horses and like all sorts of other crazy things. Like there's just a lot of things that they have to maintain to keep Disneyland running. And so sometimes, we don't get to see those numbers. We don't get to see like, people talking about like, I just don't care about that ride anymore. Or what part of the park did you spend more time in than other parts? And I think over time you just start to see parts of the park just lag because nobody's over there anymore. And so you have things like another, revamp was what did it used to be called? California Screamin' is now the Incredicoaster. And I liked California Screamin'. It was fun. I think it makes more sense to be themed. I think some of those rides, Bugs Land going away for, to make for a Marvel thing probably makes sense. Bugs Life doesn't necessarily have the prestige that it had before. But you'll also see things. One of the most sad updates that I got was they got rid of the Country Bear Jamboree, which was a live animatronic show where you could see the country bears perform. And that got taken out. It is still in Florida, which was great. Last time I went to Florida, I went to go see the country bears, and I missed them so. And it was neat because it was a different show. So I love that there was a different show that they would do in LA versus in Florida. And I think it is in other parts of the world as well. And but they did keep these three animal heads that were mounted up on the wall that would talk to each other. If you go on the Winnie the Pooh ride that is in its place now, there's a part where you can turn around and see them. They like put them on the ride. So you know, there are still nods. Rex from when they redid Star Tours is now the DJ in the bar at Star Wars Land, and so there definitely is a recognition from Imagineers and from designers at Disneyland that like we know these things changed, and so if they are going to change, we do try to put in. I think there's a couple nods to Twilight Zone in Guardians Tower. Don't quote me on that, but so I think it's just kind of a like happy gaming, because you're happy gaming. You know the value of being happy, and that sometimes it's just better to enjoy life than be frustrated about things. These things that you're describing are frustrating, but I just think they're naturally going to happen, and there's not a lot that we can do about it. And so I understand people's frustrations and concerns when stuff like this happens, but it takes a lot of energy out of me to be upset about it, because a lot of instances there's something you can do, and there certainly is a trend for them changing those things. But there's still enough going on in these parks, and I'm always a fan of new tech. I think I'm going to Star Wars Land, going to Batuu on Thursday night, and it's gonna be fun going there at night. I've seen a lot of people going during the day, and it's gonna meet just being there at night. Yeah, anytime people post pictures during the day, I'm like, okay, trying to absorb that mentally. And then anytime I see pictures on social media at night, I'm just like, skip, I don't want to see that. I want to be surprised when I go on Thursday. And I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm excited about anything new at Disneyland, but I'm also just excited about new ride tech. So I'm hearing from a lot of people, they're like, you need to prioritize what you want to do when you go to Star Wars Land, because you might not have time. You probably won't have time to do everything. And so I got to figure out, like, do I want to go to the bar? Do I want to build a lightsaber? Do I want to build a droid? What do I want to do? And definitely that ride, is front and center for me. So I'm going to make that my priority. I'm not going to get in line right away, just for people to know, because the other appointment's going to be leaving as I'm coming in. So there's still people waiting in line for that ride. So I've heard from people, they're like, wait an hour and a half and then get in line for Smuggler's Run. So, but that's going to be my top priority. Cool. And one final question, Kyle Lee, is there a gameplay mechanic or feature you either want to come back from years past, or one that is a more recent addition that you want to see implemented more going forward? Sure. I got two. One, snowboarding. I want a snowboarding game. Steep was okay. It wasn't great. And the snowboarding in that was a little weird, but I've always wanted SSX to come back. And so snowboarding. I also really like jetpacks. I really like, Shadow of the Empire. There's just some really great jetpack levels. There's some fun levels where you're shooting, but you also have your jetpack, and you have you can drop and then hit the power up the jetpack, so you can kind of like, you don't have to have it powered up all the way to get from point A to point B. You can kind of like just kind of putt your way across places, or it's fun when you have a jetpack sometimes to if you're jumping off a building, to then just hit the engine right before you're going to land and save a little bit of fuel. And games like that are fun. I never really got into, but Tribes was a big thing back in the day, and it's interesting that Tribes has kind of fallen off. Just this idea of like a multiplayer jetpack shooter, something where you're just completely airborne. You got to deal with people flying all over the place. I think that'd be fun. It'd be fun if like Halo Infinite had that, or if there are other first-person or third-person action games that had a little jetpack. It'd be fun. And there's Morgan Mohala asked a question for Troop, the best item to get from an ice cream's truck in the summer. I'm a milkshake fan. Got to go for that. There's a really great, I think it's something cone. I can't remember. There's a really great ice cream truck that drives around, and they make a killer cookies and cream milkshake. It's my answer. Troop ain't here. Sorry. There you go. So before we wrap things up, I want to do a quick editorial that I feel bad kind of talking about it. It's been a weird period of time at Easy Allies, because Ian's dad has been very ill, and as Ian mentioned, Ian's dad was on hospice, and so for those of you that don't know, hospice can be a very scary thing, because it's basically when you alternate care for someone from this is care trying to cure a disease or trying to cure the patient of something, whereas hospice is when you basically accept that there's nothing you can do at that point, and so the priorities change to, let's make sure this person is comfortable in their passing, and so I'm fortunate to have both of my parents still with me. It's going to be, I'm very fortunate to have them around, at the birth of my child. It's going to be nice to, not only have them help like doing laundry and stuff, but to have them around. And Ian just has a very special relationship with his dad, and Ian had already lost his mom. And so Ian is now without both of his parents following the death of his father. And it's two things that I want to speak about. One, I didn't know Thomas Hank very well, but I did do a Fiasconauts with him, and I did meet him on several occasions when he would come to Easy Allies events, or our paths would cross. And Thomas just seemed like he was always game for everything. I mean, I will, you will move up in estimation in my book automatically if you were on an episode of Fiasconauts, specifically one that I am on, just because and I love that our community loves that show as well, because there's just something so innately playful about that. And that's why I love that Amanda does a lot of improv, and it's so fun meeting her friends and meeting all these people that are just capable of really, taking on any character. And he definitely brought his own unique flair to Fiasconauts when we did it. It's our superheroes episode, if you're curious, if you want to go back and check that. But there's just also other things where when he would reflect on work that Ian was doing, or he would in some way be a part of something that Ian was working on. He just always seemed really very creative and very eager to. It seemed like he was basically down for anything, and that's as a creative person, that's a very fun type of personality to be around. But I also just want to talk about that it's been an interesting period in terms of what this meant for our business. Because Ian's been gone for a long time. We've had lots of requests from people wanting to know what was going on. Some people kind of put two and two together and realized that Ian was home. He was with his family. And so whatever he was doing was, whether it was positive or negative, was obviously very personal. And it's tough. It's tough for us as partners with Ian, especially in this new company that we're still trying to figure out. I mentioned, obviously, Amanda's giving birth in August, and Michael Huber was married during the time at Easy Allies, and so it was interesting. All of us attend. Are we going to go to his wedding? I don't know. Like sometimes I'll have parties or events where it's like, should I invite the allies? I don't know. Like when do we become? When are we brothers? When are we coworkers? When are we friends? When are we just acquaintances? When are we allies? Like when I think there's in different circumstances we have our bond, weakens and strengthens depending on what it needs to be. And in this case, it was difficult because obviously we wanted to be there to support Ian. A lot of us, took over, I took over hosting duty on Reaction Shots. I cut this last podcast. I prepared some stuff for him as well. Obviously he couldn't be on some things. We didn't do Fiasconauts for a while. He was not on the podcast for several episodes. And so we want to be there, and we had a hunger for information because we want to know what's going on with Ian, and we want to be there to help support him. Same time, you want to make sure Ian has space. You want to make sure whatever ally, your friend, your family member, your coworker, somebody has the time and the space that they need to process something. And so a lot of us were kind of waiting on Ian for information and for news, and so we weren't able to communicate that to our audience. And I just want to speak very briefly about what probably must have been frustrating to hear, just kind of like, especially from Ian in particular. I think it would be interesting to see what happened to Easy Allies. It's gonna be interesting to see what kind of happens to Easy Allies in August and September when I'm out, and how is that going to impact us negatively? How, what are maybe going to be the positive ramifications from that in terms of people taking on other responsibilities that they hadn't taken on before, getting smarter, getting more comfortable about the way other things within Easy Allies operates. And in this case, Huber's been gone for a couple of weeks. Huber's, going to be getting back this week, obviously for E3, but and other allies have talked about in the future about possibly, taking extended vacations. And so it's fun to get us all together. It's, I think we're at our best when we are all involved in a project, but we as a company have to be able to be prepared for not producing a show or not working on something the way that you're used to because an ally is out, and also need to get used to the unpredictability of life and how things like this might not necessarily be scheduled around E3. Mr. Hank managed to, did depart before E3 happened. And so Ian will be coming back. And so that does have its, odd way of working itself out. But at the same time, I want to be ready for everything. And so I had all these thoughts in my mind of we have to be prepared to do E3 without Ian. Like I'm not going to ask Ian if his dad is looking at possible days to live. There's absolutely no way that the priority is for him to come and cover E3, or possibly what could challenges could this company face, say if he lives through the summer, and then now we're dealing with both Ian grieving his father and me needing to take time off to have a kid. So there's big life events. These are things that I understand, a lot of you are very involved in, whether you need to know information or not, just emotionally involved in, because it is apparent through everything that we do that a lot of you care about us, and we care about you very much. We care about our work. I know Ian very much cares about his work. It was difficult for him to step away from his responsibilities and his shows and produce things, to the best of his ability. And so, this is rambly, and I'm not necessarily coming to like a conclusion here. I just want to demonstrate that, obviously this position that I was in, through no fault of obviously Ian's dad or Ian himself, to communicate things to you, but obviously not give you all of the information, that this will happen again. Like this will be something that will happen at Easy Allies, and hopefully, all of you can experience a bit of patience and calmness on the inside when like I don't have the answers. I don't necessarily know what they're doing, but if an ally is taking time off, or an ally is being communicative, it's not, if it's something bad that's happening with the company, we will do our best to explain that in ways that we can, to be as transparent as possible. But if it doesn't seem like there's kind of lines of communication happening, or if there seems like there is kind of like a quiet zone around certain areas within Easy Allies, don't necessarily assume the worst, but just know that those happen for a good reason. I think as we go along with Easy Allies and get more comfortable working for the way that this company is built, and working for other allies, working with the other allies, we get more used to when it is a good time to step away from something, when someone needs more time. And I consider myself incredibly fortunate to work with 8 really, really nice guys that are willing to give that time, and are willing to support, or willing to stand in for me if I need to take some time with my newborn, or obviously have give Ian these very precious moments with his father, and definitely the freedom to come back and to work on things as much as he does. And so apologies that a lot of tech stuff just chose to not function when our main tech guy was dealing with much more important issues, and apologies that we weren't able to communicate those things, because as we are an equal partnership, it really is upon that person. If someone's going on vacation, or in my case, it's going to that will rest on my shoulders come August, when I have to make the decision of when to come back to the podcast, come back to the group stream, come back to Cup of Jones, doing it the way it normally is, and now trying to do it with a child. I don't know if Ian watches all the episodes of Cup of Jones, or if I don't know if this is going to get to him, but just want all of the love in the world to go to Ian. And it seems very difficult. I don't think I've ever said something to a grieving human that felt right. Every time somebody has to deal with grief that intense, you want to say something like, even I sent him like a heart emoji on Twitter, and it's like, what is that? Does that mean anything? What can you really say to someone who, is not really in a position to feel better based on things people say to them? And also I don't want this to sound like a reprimand of just like, how dare you ask where Ian was while he was gone? Because as much as I am grateful for being involved in a group with 8 other people that are very understanding of people's schedules, and are very willing and eager to help out in ways that they can, and suggest issues before they happen, I am incredibly grateful and very, very lucky as we start a whole nother month of Easy Allies, and recalculate all of our charges, and look at that. It's gonna be another month staying in the studio, another month of continuing to do the work that we do at Easy A, that we have hearts in chat right now. I mean, it's like this incredibly loving community that's really focused on all of us. And I think sometimes the eagerness to know what was going on more with Ian kind of came from that place of love, of just wanting to care for us, and wanting us to be in a good place. And sometimes it can be scary and frustrating not to have all the information, and to not know what was going on, because then you think the worst. I know that. I know, before I hear back that Amanda's, got somewhere safely or landed safely, there's just always that part of my mind that's like, I don't have the information, what's going on. Yeah, stuff like this will happen. mysteries will pop up. People have to go on radio silence for various reasons, and I just want to recognize one of those things that happens because this feels different from stuff that's happened in the past in terms of something one ally has had to deal with, and what that meant for the rest of the allies having to deal with that in their place. But I don't want anything that I just said to take away, any of the business stuff, anything concerning me or stuff that I'm dealing with later in the summer, to take away from the fact that Thomas Hank was an incredible man. Thomas Hank certainly has an incredible son, and we at Easy Allies love Tom a lot, and certainly love Ian a whole bunch, and just want to wish the best for Ian. So give a hug to Ian as much as you can, love to Ian as much as you can. He might, if you missed it, he put up a very moving and honest and straightforward episode of Easy Update where he talked about you kind of get a nice look at his home as well. There's birds in the background, and there's definitely kind of feels like the dawning of a new day and in that video. But he just very honestly laid out where his head is at, and I'm sure he will be using various outlets here at Easy Allies to express his emotions and his grief. And like he said in the video, it's something that it just takes time. It's just kind of is like a well inside of you that you just kind of keep pouring a bit out here and there, and the well is never empty, but it does get better as time goes on. And so I'm looking forward to helping Ian make that better, and I know all of you are as well. And thank you for being patient and helping out with all those things. And rest in peace, Thomas Hank, and love and respect to Mr. Ian there. Our takeaways from this episode: polls. Do polls. Come on, you cowards. Interview Mark Brown of Game Maker's Toolkit, which would be a blast. I would love to just talk to trailer people. And there's a lot of trailer production houses in LA. So there's a lot of those people. I was thinking about maybe getting them on GT Live, but and then it was a show, no more. Premiere the E3 betting special on Twitch, which seems like a good idea. I will throw that over to Huber and Bossman. It will be their call. To promote the Patreon heavily during E3, I will definitely create a 30-second promo that, hey, we're Easy Allies. Like what you're seeing? Head over to patreon.com/Easy Allies to see even more, including, I won't, in that promo, at least, I won't mention our updates. I won't mention Cup of Jones first. I'll go straight to those spoiler modes and exclusive shows. Consider following, if I've spent several months with Dreams and Kyle is building this Game Boy game, it would be fun maybe to just make some weird video where the two of us just sit down and talk about building stuff and conceptualizing something. And maybe we'll have Dawn on to talk about Super Mario Maker as well. We'll just have a big creation powwow. Yeah, mixed emotions, man. I got so many emotions. We E3 this week. That's really exciting. We have a lot of technical issues to fix over frustrating tech stuff that's happened over the last couple weeks. And obviously we are mourning someone who has been a part of Easy Allies directly, who you can go appreciate their work, the ways that they have helped us produce the stuff that we do. So love to the Allies, love to Ian and his family, love to all of you. Thank you for watching. And lots of stuff coming up. No Cup of Jones next week. Might not be a Dream Streams tomorrow. No Dream Stream next week. So my schedule personally will be up in the air. If I can, I will try to remember to post something Monday morning that's just like, hey, E3's happening, everybody. No Cup of Jones today, but it'd be funny if I could at least do that in video format and just be like, happy E3, everybody. And then we'll do a big fun E3 news wrap up the following Monday after E3, because we'll be going all the way to Friday. So there won't be any time to do a makeup Cup of Jones next week, but there'll be plenty of opportunities for us to talk about stuff going on at Easy Allies during our extensive E3 coverage, which begins Saturday morning, technically, where we're going to be talking about stuff that EA is going to be doing during their gameplay streams. But really, with all those wild press conferences, things really kick off Sunday morning. Check easyallies.com for our full schedule. And have a wonderful week, everybody. Cheers.